Hello there. How are you? Trump versus Colorado. Colorado trying to fight to keep Donald John Trump off the ballot. Why don't I see? That's not right. Oh, that's annoying. StreamYard isn't working well. The trial started like an hour ago or so. But we're going to catch up. I'm going to work straight through lunch. We're going to catch on up. All right. So welcome to Trump versus Colorado. Best live coverage on the internet. Or so my dad says. Without further ado. This is where it starts. I know it's the middle. I know. It's going to seem like it's the middle, but it's very early in. So this is the best coverage I was able to do.
Later in that speech, that he did not therefore
the prosecutor presenting opening arguments.
That claim is wrong.
To keep him off the keep Trump off the ballot.
He used fight 20 times in that speech. Peaceful only once.
Ooh.
Professor Simi explains how leaders use language like that, like the peacefully comment, to create plausible deniability that is just filter. Trump well knew how his reporters would respond. He saw what happened when he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, and how they treated that as an endorsement.
Is that what he said to them?
In fact, his use of peaceful in the rally, and again, use in this proceeding, highlights that he knew the power of his other words.
Yeah, you gotta talk faster.
If you don't think people are going to engage in violence after what you told them, or that your words will provoke violence, you don't need to say be peaceful. They already will be. But that speech that we just saw got the crowd worked up and headed to the Capitol. I'll show you a video taken from the top of the Capitol at 2:23. You can see the timestamp in the upper left. So after the speech, the crowd followed Trump's orders and marched down to the Capitol.
It sounds like he's arguing incitement.
Much of the rally, they weren't doing much. They were just standing there. So what did Trump do the minute after this video? He posted a tweet that incited the mob to violence. Again, channeling on the focus on Mike Pence he used earlier in the day. He described Mike Pence as weak and said he didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution.
And he is really weak.
USA demands the truth. And look what happened. Instantaneously with this tweet, we see people read it in the crowd from bullhorns. They immediately started chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and the violence began in earnest. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. Giving states a chance to survive according to set of facts. Not the forward.
They're already inside at this point. They're already inside at this point. How stupid is that? I thought they're saying bring Mike Pence, but it could be hang. It was right after. They're already inside at this point. This is so disingenuous. He's trying to make it sound as if that's what they were inside for like an hour and a half at this point.
We need area 40 house members. They're all walking over now. We follow. We're trying to hold the other way. We're trying to hold the other way back. We need to hold the ball.
I'm not condoning violence. I never condone violence. This channel doesn't condone violence. I gotta tell you something. I'm gonna just block the view for now, just while they're showing this, because YouTube's not gonna be. YouTube might bring this whole thing crashing in the middle. So while they're just showing video of violence at the Capitol, YouTube already. YouTube gave me a strike at one point for showing that. So
there was no possible innocent explanation for that tweet that set the crowd on fire. We'll hear later today from Officer Hodges. This is his body cam at the exact same time. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, it's 2:28. So within 5 minutes of Trump's issuing that tweet, this is what he faced.
Again, I'm not showing. It's people fighting at the barricade. We're fighting at the barricade. I can't show you this. No, it's not 91 charges based on the 6. And this isn't criminal charges. This is a civil case to keep him off the ballot in Colorado. That's what this trial is about. It's a civil trial to keep him off the ballot. They're trying to show how he was inciting violence on January 6th and therefore cannot be taken onto the ballot. Act it out for you.
So within 30 minutes of the tweet, we see the picture from the same vantage point we saw before. The crowd had overrun the barriers, but this was the back of the crowd. This was a crowd that was not the front line of the attack, of the assault on our constitutional process. We have video which shows Officer Hodges, within 30 minutes of the tweet, he had retreated to the tunnel, was trying to defend the tunnel against this mob.
Gosh, how much are you going to do with this? Come on, you stink. I don't expect there to be a ton of video. This part is intended. This part is intended for the opening arguments.
Is Officer Hodges, who you'll hear from shortly.
I'll show
this
you what
was an insurrection that Trump led.
Let me go back.
He summoned
since I'm like an hour behind anyway. In case you want to know who you're going to hear from shortly, that's Officer Hodges. So they're showing him this person in order to say this is who you're going to hear from soon. This guy was caught up in the mob.
Hear from shortly. This was an insurrection that Trump led. As we've seen, he summoned and organized the mob. He gave the mob a common purpose: disrupt Mike Pence's certification of the election. He did that by inciting the mob at the Ellipse. He knew that mob was armed and dangerous. He told the mob to go to the Capitol with him. Once they were there,
the problem he has with the word incitement
not sufficiently violent,
is the Supreme Court has been very clear that that's free speech unless
others that followed.
Unless you can show
and
a direct link.
He helped the mob by refusing to mobilize resources to stop the attack.
This is why none of the charges.
He spent 3 hours
including
watching
incitement.
it unfold.
The 91 charges, criminal charges, none of them include incitement because they know that
he was the most powerful person.
It wouldn't stand.
Now, what does Trump say in response to this overwhelming evidence? He says a few things. He says, hey, I said peacefully in the speech, so I didn't engage in the insurrection. And we already talked about that. That peacefully proves his intent.
What?
He then says, I wasn't there. I did not engage in insurrection.
I guess if he said violently, that would show he had no intent.
But he did. He kept quiet. He tweeted inflammatory statements that incited the mob and watched the mayhem unfold for 3 hours with doing nothing. He continued to try to pressure Congress to do the mob's bidding and overturn the election. And lastly, Trump says, others failed to protect the Capitol. So it's not my fault. There was an insurrection. He blames others.
Okay.
But it was Trump's dereliction of duty in violation of his oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
How is it his dereliction of duty if Muriel Bowser and Nancy
You'll hear
allow
from national security expert Bill Banks,
Nancy
who's dedicated his career to
doesn't
the safety of our nation, studying how it works. He wrote a book recently called Soldiers on the Home Front, the Domestic Role of the American Military. He explains that Trump did not use the available federal resources. In fact, Trump didn't use the resources he used in response to other threats, like the Black Lives Matter protest at Lafayette Square, where they used tear gas and federal agents to clear the square very violently. Now, Trump is going to call witnesses, we understand. to say that he tried to put people in place to defend the Capitol before January 6th. That is not true.
Yeah, it was crazy.
No record exists of him doing that. No indication that he used his vast power as commander-in-chief to do that at all. That is just an invented excuse after the fact with no evidentiary support. But even that doesn't matter. Trump cannot avoid culpability for engaging in insurrection by blaming the victim. Whether or not an insurrection occurred does not turn on how well defended the Capitol was. He ignited the mob, told them to go to the Capitol, and inflamed them with his tweet. Now, finally, Trump says the law, even if all that's true, the law doesn't apply to him. First, because
you're correct.
He
That's
says he
another
just was
law
using speech.
they said.
But again, Professor Magliocca explains the history of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and using robust historical sources shows that at the time of passage, 1868, engaging in insurrection included words of incitement or specific words of encouragement. That's what Trump did here. And in any event, it's not just Trump's speech that's at issue. His conduct contributed to the mob's violence. His failure to act when his oath required him to do so led to the insurrection.
What conduct beyond his speech?
Now, Trump brings an expert, Professor De La Humpy, but he's no expert at all on the 14th Amendment. Never written a book or peer-reviewed article on this issue, on the 14th Amendment, more generally, not performed any original history. There's no record of him studying this before he wrote a short opinion piece 2 months ago. Now, Trump next argues that the 14th Amendment doesn't cover the president, that there's an exception because it's a different kind of officer. Again, Professor Magliocca will explain why history contradicts this claim. It's nonsensical to create an exception for the most powerful person in government. And at the time in 1868, there's widespread understanding that officer included the president. Finally, Trump claims that state courts like this one can't hear these disputes. Now, as we've talked about, he's wrong under Colorado law. Hanlon v. Gessler makes clear that the election code requires issues regarding a candidate's eligibility to be determined by the courts, which is what we're doing here. In addition to this bedrock law, we'll also hear from Hillary Rudy, who's the deputy director in the Secretary of State's Elections Division, and she will explain the history of Secretary of State enforcement of qualifications and qualification challenges in court. And I think Your Honor will easily conclude that this action falls well within a long line of cases where courts decide ballot eligibility requirements. Now, our Constitution prevents people who betrayed their solemn oath, as Trump did here, from serving in office.
I said I would be. I said I was going to be early.
Colorado law gives these voters
I'm already an hour and a half
to make sure their votes will count by coming to this court and ensuring that only eligible candidates appear on our ballots. Trump engaged in insurrection and therefore cannot appear on the ballot. No person, not even the former president, is above the law. We ask after this hearing that this court find Trump as an ineligible candidate.
Is the current president above the law?
And order the Secretary of State not to place him on the ballot. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I don't have a highly produced video.
Nice.
But I do
I like
have
that
a
opening.
word I think this court
Produced.
should follow and think about in this case. The United States is the oldest modern democracy, well over 200 years, far different than any other country in many ways. And what makes us different is the experiment we launched, which is this thing called elections. We have elections. And that means when it comes to decide as to who should lead our nation, it's the people of the United States of America that get to make those decisions. Not 6 voters in Colorado who've picked and chosen who they want to file a lawsuit against. And this court should not interfere with that fundamental value, that rule of democracy.
Good.
It's the people who get to decide.
Good.
And this lawsuit seeks to cancel that principle.
Strong, very strong.
This lawsuit is anti-democratic. It looks to extinguish the opportunity for millions of Coloradans, Colorado Republicans and unaffiliated voters to be able to choose and vote for the presidential candidate they want. In fact, the leading Republican presidential candidate. And by many measures, the candidate, most likely to win the presidency. They want to extinguish that opportunity by preventing him from running for office.
In Colorado,
it is anti-democratic. This is a case of lawfare
that
seeks to interfere with the presidential election.
You don't argue.
We argue here that this, at its basest level, this is election interference. The petitioners here, the 6 voters, have appointed themselves private attorney generals. They can pick and choose and file lawsuits against whom they seek to disqualify. And they rely on exceptionally weak and frankly, in some cases, fringe legal and logical theories to try and tilt the playing field of this election by wiping out President Trump's ability to run for election, well before anyone has an opportunity to vote. They're asking today for a number of historical firsts. First, this is the first, they're asking this court to be the first ever in American history, to disqualify a presidential candidate under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. We've pointed the court, I believe, to, or we will, Horace Greeley, who ran in 1872 as a Democratic presidential candidate. He had paid for Jefferson Thomas's bail.
It is legal.
He was loudly accused of giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States shortly after the Civil War when he ran. Lots of debate on that issue. No one ever once thought of trying to disqualify him from voting.
He'll win.
They took their arguments to the people for them to make that decision. Eugene Debs, Socialist Party USA candidate in 4 elections in 1920, ran from jail. He had been convicted of sedition for giving aid and comfort to enemies during the First World War by trying to stop military recruitment. He was convicted of that. He ran from jail. He was never disqualified. No attempt was made to disqualify him under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The case of Eugene Debs is often regarded as a low point in American history, a low point when it comes to First Amendment protections, and for good reason. People should be able to run for office and shouldn't be punished for their speech. The petitioners asked this court to be the first state court in American history to disqualify a presidential candidate. They're asking for the first time in American history to disqualify any federal candidate, a state court to disqualify any federal candidate.
Nobody's ever asked for that as far as I can know.
This is the first time in Colorado history anyone's ever tried to disqualify a presidential candidate under the 14th Amendment. Asking the Secretary of State to go back and research a candidate's behavior, that's also a first. Never been asked or demanded before. Even right now, there are about 50 cases either pending or have been nationwide, specifically attacking President Trump. This is not a new tactic. This is the first where a dismissal is not automatically, I shouldn't say automatically, but promptly been granted because of the weakness of so many of these arguments. They're asking for the first time that the January 6th report be treated as evidence in this court, in a court of law, that politicized hearing. That's what they're asking, is that this court rely upon that as evidence. And frankly, they're asking this court to be the first in the country ever to embrace a number of legal theories that have never been accepted by a court, state or federal. There's a lot of firsts they're trying in this case. They're legal theories. I mean, we're arguing we shouldn't even be here. And we've argued that multiple times. This is a federal issue, perhaps the most important federal issue we can have. And it's for Congress to set these standards, for Congress to provide guidance, not for the petitioners to come up with theories and try and convince you that they may be right. We've argued that the 14th Amendment is not self-executing and preemption and political question, and we understand this court's ruled against us in every instance. But nearly every court that's ever looked at presidential qualifications, and I'm not just talking about issues involving President Trump. I live in Denver, Your Honor. I understand sirens, unfortunately. So it's not just President Trump. You may recall that there was a little bit of controversy about President Obama's citizenship. And there was some controversy about Senator and presidential candidate McCain's citizenship. And there was controversy about Senator and presidential candidate Cruz's citizenship. And there's 1 or 2 instances where those went to trial. But the vast majority of them were properly dismissed. The overwhelming weight of evidence is that this case should not be here. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of these specific claims. The claim that there was an insurrection. What constitutes an insurrection really needs to be grounded in historical usage. Because if you don't ground it in historical usage, you're just making it up. Now, I'm not accusing the court of making it up. I'm accusing the petitioners of making it up. But look, you will hear from Professor Delahunty that there are lots of definitions of what an insurrection is. It's been going on, that word's been in English usage for a couple hundred years, probably more. I haven't quite looked at the etymology of it. And there are a lot of definitions. Your Honor, I submit I could construct a legal argument or law review article defending pretty much any one of those definitions. And when there are numerous definitions, that means there's really none. You might as well pick a definition out of the hat. And the petitioners have picked a definition out of the hat that suits them. That's their job. I get it. But frankly, they're making up the standard so that it fits the facts of January 6th. And I'm sure they'll try and come up with an argument that it'll just fit the facts of January 6th and it'll never fit any other facts and there can never be any consequences. But the bottom line is they're making it up and they're picking a definition out of the hat. What constitutes an insurrection needs to be grounded in historical usage because that's what the law demands. That's what equality under the law demands. That's what fairness, so we understand what the standards are by which we comport our behavior, not at post facto making it up to try and figure that out. The term engage. The term engage means to do something. Frankly, no one really knows what that means, but I think we can all agree it means to do something. That's what the word engage means.
Hey, brother.
Okay? There's substantial historical evidence that engage does not mean mere incitement through words.
Saying 14th Amendment.
And frankly,
Incitement.
President Trump didn't engage. He didn't carry a pitchfork to the Capitol grounds. He didn't
Insurrection.
lead a charge. He didn't get in a fist fight with legislators. He didn't goad President Biden into going out back and having a fight. He gave a speech in which he asked people to peacefully and patriotically go to the Capitol to protest. Now, I understand that there are several experts that are going to testify, and one's going to testify that President Trump, he just didn't do enough. He should have done more. Now, that's the case of Monday morning quarterback.
It's really subjective.
Saying, you should have done more. You didn't do enough.
You can always say
Should
that.
have done more. Should have
It's
done
like saying
early,
tax the
more
rich.
stuff earlier.
Like how much?
I can come up with all kinds of theories this professor will say as to
Tax
why
them
you should
more.
have done enough stuff. And that professor is
So
no
stupid.
doubt a learned man and very thoughtful on this. But his basic argument when it comes down to it is they're claiming President Trump was negligent. No, we reject that factual claim, of course. And you'll hear that evidence that characterization is completely wrong. But more fundamentally, the entire theory is wrong. The failure to do something is the opposite of the word engage. It's the opposite of the word engage. And we've argued engage requires specific intent. Someone doesn't just sort of stumble into starting an insurrection. They have to have the intent to do that. And you'll hear evidence that President Trump took very specific actions to try to prevent violence, to take precautions that he didn't want there to be
It
violence.
seems stupid
on
trying
January
to
6th.
stop an insurrection.
And on
that you're
January 6th,
intending
he
to
called for
cause.
peace. And he used
Good
the word
argument.
peace at least 4 times in his speech at the Ellipse and 2 tweets and a video message. So he asked for peace. Now, the petitioners have played a couple videos.
Cards are stacked against you, I guess.
I've been here before, Your Honor.
I promise it's going to be equal opportunity problem.
I'm assuming your clerks are not taking time against me when the sirens go by. Stop that timer, please. So my next point is, thank God we have a First Amendment. I'm very thankful for the First Amendment. Spent most of my career defending the First Amendment. Now, there's a reason it's the first, not the second, not the eighth, as I debate with my friends who like the Second Amendment. It's the First Amendment, and it's free speech. And I referred to Eugene Debs before. Eugene Debs was thrown in jail. He had to run for president from jail because of his speech. And it's properly condemned, that case today. And in fact, even then, his sentence was commuted very shortly after the election of 2020. None of President Trump's speech ever called for violence, just the opposite. None of it ever called for insurrection. Did it call for political pressure? Yeah. Did it use a metaphor to fight in the political context? Yes. And I don't think even the petitioners would allege that President Trump, when he says fight, he wants to get into a fist fight with people. Okay. None of his speech called for the overthrow of government. None of it. Any objective reading, the plain language of his speech, was clearly not directed towards violence. Now, the petitioners are going to have an expert on speech, an expert who says right-wing speech. He understands what right-wing speech, right-wing extremist
not
speech
left-wing
really means.
speech, only
And
right.
he's basically going to argue when you strip away all the academic language and you look at what he's saying. He's going to say, look, President Trump used a bunch of dog whistles. And of course, a dog whistle is a whistle that is a very high pitch that humans can't hear, but dogs can hear. Okay? And he's going to say, President Trump had this sort of dog whistle. I don't know if he'll use the phrase dog whistle, but he used a speech that really these far right-wing extremists could understand and mobilize on. But us mere mortals, we missed it. We didn't understand it, but those folks understood it. He's going to say that normal, sort of commonly used English doesn't count because there's this subjective special language out there that is sort of underneath it all that has been unearthed by the sociologist. And only right-wing extremists and people very learned in sociology and right-wing extremism can understand. And he's going to say that with his expertise, he's been able to decipher what we normal mortals cannot. And his decipherment is going to basically say that President Trump was really ordering people to be violent. Even when he said peaceful, patriotically, even when he sent out tweets that said be peaceful, that's not really what he meant.
How he was saying.
Right-wingers knew it. He meant something else. This turns our American values on their head.
Nice.
It is fundamentally anti-First Amendment. He is saying that when we look at political speech, we don't look at it in an objective way. We don't look at the plain meaning of the words. We look at this secret, hidden interpretation that no one in this courtroom, or, well, I mean, maybe someone in this courtroom besides him can understand. Maybe he thinks I understand it and no one else can. I will submit I was in Georgia on January 6th helping with an election. But the right wing can understand it, but no one else. That is anti-First Amendment. In fact, that has been soundly rejected by our courts, and properly so. We look at what people say as we commonly understand them. And the common understanding of peacefully and patriotic means don't commit violence and support your country. That's what it means. Let's talk about the history and meaning of Section 3. You're going to hear from two professors. You've gotten about 40,000 words of briefing on sort of the meaning and of Section 3. You've rendered an opinion against us. And I understand, that's a conditional opinion.
I hope my volume levels are better.
You want to hear more argument, and that's what we're providing. And so I'm going to ask you three things, all right? First, I'm going to ask you to reconsider your footnote 5 in your order. I'm not, Your Honor, because I'm not going to take up the time. But I'm simply going to ask you to reconsider it, okay? Thank you. And I think those cases deserve a much closer reading, and I respectfully say I believe that they were improperly mischaracterized. Okay? So that's my first request.
Yeah, I like
my
his
second
argument.
request is,
I like his argument too.
When you look at the experts and our position, and I think the court ultimately agrees, is that they're testifying as to what the law is and what the history is. And Your Honor rightfully recognized that there's other folks out there. So I'm just going to give you a lineup of the other folks. On one side, the petitioners cite Baud and Paulson and Graber, three professors. Baud, Paulson, and Graber. And on our side, we cite Tillman and Blackman.
Now you one of these from your $20.
And I'd like you to take particular care to look at Lash's, Professor Lash's articles. And because he's done a more thorough analysis of the history behind the 14th Amendment in Section 3, the congressional debates, and the ratification debates, not just what legislators said, but how it was understood by the public as well. You're going to get an overview of that. You're going to get argument on that. But I'm going to urge you to take a look at those others closely. And third, as we've said, we think this is legal argument and not appropriate for rules of evidence. It's in. The court will make good, will provide its analysis. And we have talked to the petitioners about, frankly, including the expert reports, the law professors, as demonstrative exhibits to review. That's fine. I think what you're going to see is when I
His point is we should not be at trial right now. This should have been dismissed by you before.
There's a reason presidential candidates.
I just want to remind you about that here at the trial.
No one's even attempted to under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Okay, there's a reason this is a unique case. There's a reason cases like this have either never been brought or quickly rejected. There's reasons for that. And the reasons are grounded in the text and the language of the 14th Amendment. You're going to hear about the Secretary's authority from Ms. Hillary Rudy. This is sort of an interesting case in the sense that my understanding is petitioners are calling Ms. Rudy and haven't even spoken to her. And we haven't even spoken to her. So it's going to be an adventure.
That's very unusual.
But having had some experience in that office, I'm confident you will see that this case is a radical outlier from the Secretary's past practice, in addition, obviously, to the 14th Amendment. Let's talk a little bit about the evidence before the court today, or this next week. To be sure.
By the way, I plan on covering this entire trial every day and starting on time.
As you have described, we've talked about this as a mantra. I'll submit volume does not equal quality. A lot of attorneys does not equal a good argument.
Nice.
A lot of stuff in front of the court does not equal good evidence. The court shouldn't confuse a vigorous effort with a good argument or with good evidence. If anything, the fact that they have to put on so much and make one inference and pile one argument on top of another shows the weakness of their case, not strength. After all the time they've prepared this case,
it's a house of cards.
They've got the January 6th report. They got 2 police officers out of hundreds, perhaps thousands of police officers there. And not commanders, but 2 police officers. And they've got 3 professors. 2 law professors to testify about the law and the sociologist to testify about the coded language. That's what they've got. And they've got 1 House member. I'm sorry, 1 House member. So that's what they've got. And
then to bring in Representative
Swalwell. This case is frankly about the January 6th report. This is their effort to get court to endorse the January 6th report. That's what it comes down to. The video montage with overlaid sound that you saw in this opening argument, that's a pretty good production. And the reason it's a good production is because the January 6th committee hired a television producer to produce this stuff for primetime TV. The January 6th report made 411 findings, and petitioners have asked to introduce 408 of them, many of which this court has allowed conditionally and allowed argument against. But this report is poison, and I mean poison very bluntly. It is a one-sided political document of cherry-picked information, no adversarial process, with a preordained conclusion. It omits a number of other arguments. It ignored other witnesses before it. And it ignores other explanations and causes. It has very much. Let me ask you this, Honor, and obviously I'm asking rhetorically. If someone walked into court and said, hey, here's how this court case is going to work. I, on my side, the prosecutor, I'm going to get all kinds of time, years, year and a half, to investigate witnesses, to take statements, to gather evidence, okay? And people who strongly disagree with my viewpoint, they get no time whatsoever. They don't get to interview any witnesses. They don't get to get any evidence. They get none of that, but I get all of it. I get to do all of that. And on top of that, you're not going to hear the case. I'm going to choose my own panel. I'm going to choose my own judges. I'm going to choose my Democrats and a couple of Republicans that agree with me. I get to choose them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire a television producer. And I'm going to time this for an election. And I'm going to put all that out there. And I want you to render legal opinions based on the quality of that evidence. I think you and everyone else would be would be repulsed by that process. But that's what the January 6th process was. And you are going to hear from a congressman involved in this, just the deficiencies and the problems of that January 6th process. And so what the petitioners are doing is they're trying to shove this January 6th report as evidence for this court. They're asking the court to endorse that process. They're asking the court to endorse that one-sided poisonous report. There is a reason Democrats, for the large part, love that report and cite it. And there's a reason Republicans, for the most part, hate that report and condemn it.
No, don't hate it.
And the reason why is
disregard it.
That report is a political document first and foremost. This, however, is a court of law. Like you, we, like petitioners, attorneys, have spent the majority, perhaps all of our adult working lives
this opening
as officers of the court, defending one of the greatest American
He seems like a
institutions,
much
one of the greatest
stronger
world
attorney than the
institutions.
prosecutor.
It's fair courts
The
that conduct themselves according to the rule of evidence, that work
attorney on
hard to
behalf of the
come
state.
with good decisions. That's what we do. That's what courts do. That is not what the January 6th report was. And we should hold ourselves here to a much higher standard than that poisonous January 6th report. We should allow in only real evidence that's subject to cross-exam. Is properly authenticated by people who actually have knowledge of that.
Yep.
That's what this court should be about, not importing a bunch of stuff.
It's ridiculous that they're allowed to import it at
really
all,
has
actually.
little, if any, credibility.
It's hearsay. It's
We also
classic
hear from two
hearsay.
police officers, and we want to be very respectful of those police officers. But like any human being, they had a very limited viewpoint on what happened on January 6th. And we're going to ask that you limit the testimony to actually what the officers knew. Not what they guessed at, not what they surmised, but what they knew and what they saw.
In other words, do your job,
Their
Judge.
actual experience. And we'll point out that, frankly, I mean, there's a reason these officers are here, and it's because they're intense dislike for President Trump. You're going to hear from a member of the House of Representatives, and we're going to give you a member of the House of Representatives too.
I like this. He's spelling out how
There
he's
you have
going to cut them down.
And then you're going to hear from three experts from the petitioners. Two are going to testify to what the law is, and then you're going to have the sociologist, whom we've already spoken about. That's it. That's their evidence. At the end of the day, their evidence is the January 6th report. Everything they bring in is part of the January 6th report. I won't say everything, but the vast majority of it.
And to be fair,
Our evidence.
his chances of winning the
I've
state of
refrained from naming
Colorado are
witnesses.
really slim.
I'll continue to follow that
But
convention.
if one
But you're going
state
to hear that
does it,
President Trump took very specific
a whole
precautions
bunch
to
will.
prevent violence on
One
that
state
day
can get away with it.
as president. You're going to hear that the organizers of the rally at the Ellipse took precautions to avoid violence or inflammatory rhetoric. You're going to hear that the rally at the Ellipse was peaceful. There was no violence. You didn't
Michael,
have a
can you
crowd that
dial
was
it back a
intent on
little bit,
violence
please?
Before or after President Trump's
With like the
speech.
all caps and all that stuff.
You're going to see that President Trump's communications on January 6th called for peace. They called for respect of the police. Certainly, two police officers that were involved in violence, you're going to see that from them. But we also have at least one witness who's going to say, look, I saw very, very little. I saw a peaceful crowd. Nearly everyone was peaceful. That's a different perspective. And so it's impossible, we think, to say the mob did this, the mob did that, the mob, the mob. There are a lot of people with a lot of different actions, a lot of behavior. There was not a mind meld mob that President Trump supposedly mobilized. And then you're going to hear about how the January 6th report was a completely partisan, unreliable document. This case here is about President Trump's right to run for office. That right is the flip side of the coin for people to be able to vote for the candidate of their choice. People can't vote without candidates. Candidates aren't really candidates if people can't vote for them. It's the same side of the coin. And so we've talked about the right for the people of Colorado to vote for someone for office. And that's very closely bound with the right of Donald J. Trump to be able to run for office. And the petitioners seek to deny millions of Coloradans that right. And they seek to deny President Trump his rights. Now, I understand the posture that this is merely a state disqualification case. And it's not. This is a 14th Amendment case. And it's dressed up as a state proceeding. 95% of the evidence is the 14th Amendment. Maybe it's 92%. The overwhelming majority of the evidence in this case is about the 14th Amendment. And the overwhelming argument is about the 14th Amendment. And the consequences are about the 14th Amendment. And it asks the court to interpret the 14th Amendment. That's what this case is about. If it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. This is a 14th Amendment case, okay? And so I want to bring, it's a constitutional case. It's sort of what we lawyers dream of being able to litigate. We don't dream in law school of litigating a Section 1204 qualifications. We dream of litigating constitutional law. And that's what this is. It's a constitutional case. And so I'm going to bring you to my last point. So I'm old enough and overweight enough. So I've been litigating election law in the state of Colorado for well over 2 decades. And this is the third presidential candidate ballot access case I have litigated. Now, obviously, I'm familiar with the law nationwide. And there is a rule in election law. And that rule is called the rule of democracy. Maybe I'm making it up a little bit, but it's the rule of democracy. And that rule says that when something is close, or when there's a unique and strange argument on the other side, okay, when there's a question or an ambiguity or a stretch, the rule of democracy says we err on the side of letting people vote.
Michael.
That's what the rule says.
His last warning, stop
now,
spamming the chat.
We've made preemption arguments. We've argued about holding office, that the 14th Amendment applies to holding office so that Congress has the choice to remove a disqualification. We shouldn't short circuit that.
Right,
we've made arguments about officer of the United States. We've made arguments about engagement, insurrection, First Amendment, all of that stuff. And to date, the court has either deferred those or oftentimes ruled against us. But what I'm asking this court to do is apply the rule of democracy. When something's close or ambiguous or a stretch or an unusual argument, you don't interpret it as a way to cancel the opportunity for people to choose their representatives. You don't interpret it as a way to cancel the ability of millions of people to be able to vote for the leader of the free world. What you do is you interpret it to allow people to vote. Because there is no doubt that the 6 electors don't like President Trump. And I would submit that maybe their attorneys don't like President Trump. And they're experts. And I know the police officers don't like President Trump. They don't like President Trump. And they have every right to vote against him. But there are millions of people in Colorado and across this country who are inspired by President Trump, who view him as someone who protects their interests and who are going to and is going to create a nation, help build a nation that they want to live in and that they want their children to live in. Millions of people look to him for hope and inspiration. And who are the petitioners to prevent those people from not being able to vote on that? Who are they? Well, we're arguing that they shouldn't be able to stop those votes. That when millions of people are inspired by a candidate, and millions of people may hate that candidate, what we need to do and what the rule of democracy says and what makes America great is we get to vote on that person. We don't stifle it, short circuit it through a court proceeding. We're confident that that's what the framers thought about when they drafted the 14th Amendment. We're confident that that's historical usage.
They weren't really the framers.
We're confident that our legal arguments and our evidence
100 years after the framers.
And part of the reason we're confident is because those arguments and that evidence fits within the long tradition of American democracy and of American law to allow an election to go forward rather than short-circuiting it and engaging in what we would consider anti-democratic behavior. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Hit it hard. Oh, good.
Yes, we do. A brief one, Your Honor. The Colorado Republican Party has intervened here, Your Honor, in order to
urge you to vindicate the important and ultimate right of the party to select the candidates whose names will appear on the primary election ballot as Republican nominees for President of the United States. As the Supreme Court has recognized, under our political system, a basic function of a political party is to select the candidates to be offered to the voters. Indeed, a party's ability to select its candidates implicates the First Amendment right to association. And Colorado law is entirely consistent with this. Section 1204 of the Election Code requires the Secretary of State to place on the ballot, quote, only those candidates who are seeking the nomination of a political party as a bona fide candidate for President of the United States pursuant to political party rules. As the evidence will show, the rules of the Colorado Republican Party require a bona fide candidate to satisfy three categories of rules. First, the candidate must comply with the constitutional requirements set forth in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, namely that the candidate be 35 years of age, be a natural-born citizen, and have lived here for 14 years. Second, the candidate must register his committee with the FEC. Third, the candidate must demonstrate enthusiasm, viability, seriousness, and competitiveness according to certain party-defined standards. President Trump has satisfied each of these requirements, and the party has certified to the Secretary of State that he is a bona fide presidential candidate affiliated with the Colorado Republican Party. The Secretary of State has no basis upon which to thwart the party's political choice and deny him a place on the ballot. As the Secretary herself acknowledges, Section 1204 does not give her the authority to evaluate whether a bona fide candidate is selected by the Colorado Republican Party would be subject to disqualification under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and for all the reasons articulated by Mr. Gessler, which I will not repeat, and we have briefed, the Constitution doesn't give the Secretary the independent right to do so, nor does it authorize this court to. Thank you.
In case you joined late, this is a trial where Colorado is trying to keep Trump off of the ballot based on his involvement in January 6th.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Grant Sullivan for the Secretary of State. May it please the court.
Grant Sullivan.
It's been said that this is an extraordinary case, and the Secretary agrees. I think the video that we just saw shows that. But in many ways, this is a very typical proceeding under the Colorado Election Code, specifically Section 113. As in nearly all Section 113 actions, a group of eligible voters alleges that an election official, here the Secretary, is about to commit a breach of her duties or other wrongful act. And like other Section 113 cases, a candidate and a political party have intervened to participate. That's not at all unusual. It's also not at all unusual for the Secretary of State or other election official in a 113 action to act as a nominal respondent and await the court's direction while the real parties in interest present evidence on the factual issues. Our pleadings cite three examples from just the last couple.
So his point is we don't have a position.
Consistent with this history and practice, the Secretary of State does not intend to offer any evidence in her own right in this case. The Secretary, unsurprisingly, does not have any direct evidence on whether Donald Trump engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States. Other parties, of course, will present evidence.
We're just here for you to direct us whether or not we should remove them.
What the Secretary can do and will do in this case is make her Deputy Elections Director available to testify on the election administration issues that the court has signaled some interest in. We anticipate that the Deputy Elections Director will testify regarding how the Secretary's office administers Colorado's election law.
And that's the appropriate way for that's the appropriate position for the AG to take.
And that includes the presidential primary provisions in Colorado's Proposition 107. Now, at the end of the day and the beginning of the day,
and again, he's not going to win Colorado. This is about the rest of the country.
Responsibility for the attack on the Capitol.
I mean, I guess he could win Colorado. It's not like it's California.
But she welcomes the court's direction on whether his actions rise to such a level as to disqualify him from appearing on the presidential primary ballot in Colorado. And she will, of course, follow the court's judgment on that question. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm impressed with the AG that she
Your Honor,
didn't.
before that, I just want to give your
just
preference
neutral
on
position.
admission of exhibits. Was it appropriate to move for the unobjected to exhibits I referenced in opening now, or would you like to do that at a break? What's Your Honor's preference? Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Courtroom looks very small.
Springboarding from the Secretary's counsel's request earlier, but our representative, Mr. Dave Williams, is also listed as a witness. We would ask permission to be able to have him log in either online or view the proceedings.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mikhail Suss for the petitioners. Petitioners call Officer Daniel Hodges. Mikhail Suss.
Oh, I agree. You have to draw the line. I don't care if this was California. You have to basically say no, 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 zero. This is insanity.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated, and I'll just make sure it's going to the phone.
Please.
You should feel free to kind of position that screen in any way that you like. You don't need to look right into it.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Daniel Hodges.
And where do you currently work?
Currently work for the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C.
And what is your rank?
I'm an officer.
When did you join the DC Police Department?
I joined the D.C. Police Department in December of 2014, so I've been on for almost 9 years now.
And what was your job prior to joining the DC Police Department?
Prior to joining the D.C. Police Department, I joined the Virginia National Guard in 2012. I served a 6-year contract and was honored with discharge in 2019.
What divisions are you assigned to at the DC Police Department?
At MPD, I am assigned to patrol the 4th District. I am also assigned to Civil Disturbance Unit 42.
And how long have you been a member of Civil Disturbance Unit 42?
I've been with Civil Disturbance Unit 42 or CDU 42 since its inception, approximately 5 years.
And what is the Civil Disturbance Unit?
Civil Disturbance Unit is an organization within MPD that officers are assigned to civil platoons. We are activated and deployed to plan First Amendment assemblies on an as-needed basis. Once we are there, we perform law enforcement duties around that First Amendment assembly, be it traffic control or just high visibility, making our presence known, and should they turn riotous, we fix that as well.
And what duties do you perform as a member of the Civil Disturbance Unit?
As a member of CD42, I perform all the duties that I just described. CD42 is also what's called a rapid response platoon. That means that we are issued hard gear pads that are not standardized for, they're not standard to all CD members. So we use those as well.
Do you use any other sort of special equipment as a member of the CDU?
I do. CDU officers are issued ballistic helmets, gas masks, riot batons, and then the hard gear pads I just told you about.
And as a member of the CDU, do you receive special training?
We do. CDU members are trained in ways to move in formations as a group, effectively utilize ourselves in a crowd or formations, and how to make arrests and protect ourselves in order to see the event of a criminal person.
Does the CDU respond to civil disturbances anywhere in Washington, D.C., or only in particular areas of the city?
Typically, MPD's CDU units respond to areas under a local city, under the control of a local city. However, we also respond to property that belongs to our federal departments should they request our assistance.
I'd like to turn now to the morning of January 6, 2021. Were you on assignment with the Civil Disturbance Unit that morning?
I was.
Were you aware of any proceedings happening at the U.S. Capitol building that day?
I was.
What was that?
I was aware that at the United States Capitol that day.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Okay, can't complain.
And what were your initial orders?
So is this done like in a local court in Colorado?
Yeah, it's under their state constitution.
Okay. I just didn't know if it'd be like Supreme Court. All right.
Stood on Constitution Avenue, making ourselves visible, letting people know that the police were present.
And about what time was that?
We probably arrived on scene around 8.
The audio isn't so great.
And were you monitoring a particular event?
We were monitoring Donald Trump's rally on the news.
As you were monitoring the crowd, did you notice anything unusual about how they were dressed?
As I was monitoring the crowd, I noticed that there were multiple people who were wearing tactical gear. That some had helmets like ballistic helmets, goggles, gas masks, armored gloves, backpacks full of gear that we identified.
It was an army.
Boots, some earpieces,
It was an army. Yeah.
How did you feel seeing those people wearing tactical gear?
How many were armed?
Why is that?
Because there's no need for all that tactical gear to listen to a politician speak apart.
No need according to who?
While you were deployed on Constitution Avenue, did you have any other cause for concern about what would happen that day?
I did. While I was on Constitution Avenue, I was monitoring our radio frequency we were using that day for the First Amendment Assembly. I was heard our gun unit, our GRU unit, rather, was identifying people in the crowd who had firearms or that thought potentially had firearms. They were identifying them so they could make arrests later on or at the time as need be. I also heard our explosive ordnance disposal unit, EOD, come over the air and say that they had identified a device on the Capitol grounds. They also said that the device was viable, and I took this to mean that they had found a bomb.
Did the crowd stay at the site of President Trump's rally at the Ellipse?
Largely, the crowd, after staying at the Ellipse for some time, flowed back in the opposite direction of Constitution Avenue towards the United States Capitol.
And what was the general tenor of the crowd as they were moving towards the Capitol building?
The crowd, as they were moving toward the Capitol, were moving with a sense of purpose. It seemed like they were moving as they had something to do there, even though ostensibly the event they were there to attend had concluded or come close to it.
Was your platoon eventually deployed to the Capitol?
We were. We were monitoring the radio, and we heard our commander that day getting more and more agitated as people continued to flow toward the United States Capitol. You could tell from the way he was talking, the crowd was becoming aggressive and attacking and overwhelming the defenses present. Eventually, he requested CD-40.
To claim that he's guilty
went back to our vans,
could be.
transport ourselves, put on our hard gear, and made our way toward the Capitol grounds.
This is
And
the
about
first.
what time did you
This
receive
is the
the
first
order to deploy to
witness.
the Capitol?
I believe it was about 1:30.
And what was your understanding of why you were being deployed to the Capitol?
We were being deployed to the Capitol to reinforce the defense there, to prevent people who were attacking officers from gaining into the Capitol.
Prior to January 6, 2021, had you ever been called to respond to civil unrest at the U.S. Capitol building?
No.
What did you do after receiving that order to deploy to the Capitol?
After receiving the order to deploy to the Capitol, we, as I said, went back to vans, made our way toward the Capitol grounds. We made our way toward the, I'd say, northwestern edge of the Capitol grounds, where we got out on foot, organized ourselves into two columns, and started marching toward the west terrace of the Capitol.
I want to focus now on the hours between the hours of 1:50 p.m. to 3:10 p.m. Could you tell us what happened when you arrived at the Capitol building?
When we arrived at the Capitol, as I said, we organized ourselves into two columns, started marching toward the west terrace. The crowd at the edges of the Capitol grounds were more spread out, less aggressive. However, they quickly identified us and started hurling insults at us, calling us traitors, oath breakers, telling us to remember our oaths, telling us to be on the right side of history. And then we ignored them and moved on. As we got closer to the west terrace, the crowd became more dense, more aggressive, until eventually we were attacked. Our assailants cut us in half, whereas the forward part of our element was able to keep moving toward the west terrace. The rear portion, which I was a part of, was cut off and encircled by our assailants. And we were attacked at that point and had to defend ourselves there.
Over the course of the day, how did the crowd attack you?
The crowd attacked me in a variety of ways, punching, kicking, pushing. Chemical irritants such as OC spray or pepper spray. I was beaten in the head with blunt instruments, including my own riot con. I was pinned and crushed with a police shield. I can't remember all the different ways in which I was assaulted.
Did you sustain injuries?
I did.
Which injuries?
I experienced pain and bruising about my body and a swollen hand. I had a large contusion on my head from being struck with my riot baton, which I believe resulted in concussion, as I experienced a headache for about 2 weeks after the fact. I had lacerations in the face, bleeding from the mouth, and pain in my eye from where someone attempted to gouge it out.
Tell us what was going through your head when you were being attacked that day.
I was afraid. I was afraid for my life, and for that, my colleagues. I was afraid for the people in the United States Capitol building. I was afraid for Congress, Vice President, and what these people would do to them and how it would affect our democracy.
Over the course of the day, did you see your fellow officers attacked?
I did.
How?
In very much the same way as I was attacked, punching, kicking, pushing, being struck with blunt instruments. I unfortunately couldn't pay too much attention to the ways in which they were being attacked as I had my hands full myself.
Over the course of the day, did you see the attackers use weapons?
I did.
What types?
They used flagpoles that they had brought as blunt instruments to beat us with. They used stolen police equipment such as riot cops,
On people?
shields to assault us.
Do they use them on people?
They used pieces of what's called black rack style barriers, which they had broken into its constituent pieces
No guns, right?
The mob to attack us. And pepper spray, chemical irritants. That's all I can think of.
And you testified earlier that you saw people on the morning of January 6th wearing tactical gear. Is that right?
That's correct.
At the Capitol, did you see individuals in the crowd wearing similar types of tactical gear?
I did.
And did you observe any behavior by the crowd indicating why they were at the Capitol building?
I did.
Your Honor, I just want to be very careful because I've read some of his prior testimony, and he has a definite tendency to mind read. So I want to be very careful that he limits himself to what he actually observed and not try to get into the head and speculate about what's going through the head of
Good.
individual members.
He's objecting that he's speculating about what other people are thinking rather than actually what he
He
saw.
hasn't testified as to any of those things.
Yes, he has. How does he know it's pepper spray?
And if and when he does, you can make a request to strike.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Please.
Did you observe any behavior by the crowd indicating why they were at the Capitol?
I did.
How does he know why?
I saw the crowd carrying flags with Trump campaign slogans on it, advertising Trump for 2020, which was confusing as the 2020 presidential election was over.
It was confusing. I was very confused.
It's my understanding
I was very confused. Why? The election's over. Why are they here?
2020 presidential election was somehow stolen.
Objection, Your Honor. Unless he has a basis for saying what that slogan meant to any particular person carrying it, that is pure speculation.
Overruled, but would you just make sure when you make the objections to speak in the microphone?
Yes,
And you don't need to stand up if you don't want to.
I saw people carrying banners saying "Stop the Steal," which, based on my understanding, means that people believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen, which was confusing to me.
It's confusing me too because you're an idiot.
That this was the case. I heard them chant "Fight for Trump."
It's very
which seems
confusing.
To the point. They were carrying various flags referencing war and revolution. They told us that we were on the wrong side of history when we were defending the United States Capitol and the peaceful transfer.
Did members of the crowd reference President Trump?
They did.
How?
By the clothes they wore,
I don't see that.
carried saying "Fight for Trump." They called referenced Joe Biden as a tyrant. Things of that nature.
Over the course of the day, did you get a sense of how big the crowd was?
I did. It was difficult to gauge on the ground where I was, and I have no formal training in crowd.
Oh, that tall
However,
thing is probably a
When I
calendar.
was on the front of the West Terrace, rather, I was able to look out over the crowd a bit, and I could not see the end of them. There were thousands, I would say.
How did the size of the mob compare to the size of law enforcement that were present that day?
I was, the mob outnumbered us a great deal. I'd say 50 to 70 to 1.
Why didn't Pelosi send more
What
troops?
impact, if any, did the size of the mob have on your ability to do your job that day?
The size of the mob was the greatest weapon utilized by the mob that day, or rather, most effectively utilized, I should say. They had us completely outnumbered. They had us encircled.
This is the best audio I've got. I have it max volume.
Need to get out of there for medical attention. We were unable to easily receive reinforcements. There were no uniforms differentiating people who were violent from the people who were not. So the mob aided and abetted those who were violent in that way, as those who were violent would then fall back into the crowd, and we would be unable to engage them.
Officer Hodges, just pause for a second so that I think there was an objection trying to be made.
Yes, Your Honor. The objection is he continually talks about the mob as if all the individuals in the crowd were acting with a single mind or single intent, when clearly
This is a cross-examination point. He can use the words that he chooses to use. So overruled. I think you probably need to remind him who he was.
Officer Hodges, I was asking you, did the size of the mob have your, what impact did the size of the mob have on your ability to do your job that day?
That's right.
Everyone's audio is awful other than the person asking questions.
We had to treat everyone as a threat, and in that way, we couldn't focus on people who were violent. Our attention was that it was difficult to engage and protect ourselves and others.
How, if at all, did the size of the mob impact your ability to use firearms?
The size of the mob made it extremely difficult to use firearms. Well, there were those in the mob who at times used force or assaulted us in ways that were likely to cause serious bodily injury or death. We could not, it made it extremely difficult to engage them legally with firearms, as we are not allowed to shoot into a crowd. As the crowd was largely the main elements present, and very rarely did we encounter individuals that we could not handle one-on-one. It made it so that firearms were an extremely risky proposition, both legally and morally.
How, if at all, did the size of the mob impact your ability to make arrests?
The size of the mob made it impossible to make arrests.
Let me see.
When we make a custodial arrest, we are legally obligated to the safety, security, and medical treatment of our prisoner. These are things that we could not guarantee for ourselves at the time, let alone members of Congress and the Vice President inside, let alone, again, having prisoners we might want to take. Again, if we took a prisoner, typically that requires 2 officers to guard them at all times, and we needed every officer we had to assist in the defense. And so taking prisoners at that time was simply untenable.
How, if at all, did the size of the mob impact the ability of emergency medical personnel to render aid to individuals at the Capitol?
As far as I can tell, the Capitol was encircled. There was no way for medical personnel to access the Capitol. So the mob made it impossible for us to receive professional medical care.
What about nonviolent people in the mob? How, if at all, did they impact your ability to do your job?
Nonviolent people in the mob were still part of the craft. They created all the problems that I previously testified to.
So, Officer Hodges, are DC Metro police officers required to wear body cameras when they're on duty?
We are.
Were you wearing your department-issued body camera on January 6, 2021?
I was.
And was your body camera activated when you were on the U.S. Capitol grounds?
It was.
Mr. Hain, please pull up what's been admitted as Exhibit 10 and pause the video. Officer Hodges, can you see the video on your screen?
I can.
What is this?
This depicts me and my platoon walking towards the West Terrace on January 6, 2021.
I want us to not apologize because I think I probably confused people. When you're using exhibit, we should offer evidence.
Okay. I can go back and do that for this. So, Officer Hodges, can you see what's on your screen?
I can.
What is this?
This is my body-worn camera recording from January 6, 2021.
And does the footage fairly and accurately depict what you witnessed on January 6, 2021?
It does.
Your Honor, move to admit Exhibit 10.
Your Honor, we have yet seen the video, so I'm not sure how I can state that it accurately depicts what we saw that day.
Okay, but presumably you've seen it before and you've had access to it. So
Capitol grounds.
Sure, but in general, I'd like to limit whoever is to one party, but
Absolutely. Your Honor, I understand the procedural posture of this case. Normally, you listen to the video, the whole thing.
I'm being told that Reuters is better, so I found the right spot. Thank you, Pam. And we're just going to switch this over here. It should be around the same spot.
really confuse people. When you're using exhibit, we should offer an admitted into evidence.
Oh, okay. I can go back and do that for this. So, Officer Hodges, can you see what's on your screen?
I can.
What is this?
This is my body-worn camera recording from January 6, 2021.
And does the footage fairly and accurately depict what you witnessed on January 6, 2021?
It does.
Your Honor, move to admit Exhibit 10.
Your Honor, we haven't yet seen the video, so I'm not sure how I can state that it accurately depicts what we saw that day.
Okay, but presumably you've seen it before and you've had access.
Presumably, you don't even ask him that? Oh my God. I'm not liking this judge. Presumably?
Sure, but in general,
Shouldn't you have the lawyer establish foundation that he's watched it before?
Absolutely. Your Honor, I understand the procedural posture of this case. Normally, you listen to the video, he looks at the whole thing, he authenticates it, then it's time for objection or admission. I guess our preferences, and I understand that this has been admitted already. I understand we've seen it. I understand. But just for purposes of the record, we think that may be the best way to do it. But
Maybe establish foundation like any other judge would.
So I want to make clear, you made some objections to exhibits and I overruled some of that objections. That doesn't mean that it's admitted into evidence. It needs to be presented at trial to actually be admitted into evidence. And so I think that he's offering to admit it. I know, I assume you object. If you do, let's get it on the record. and proceed. Does that make sense?
There's text underneath it. If we can just listen to it, and if the text reflects what was said, we're not there.
Okay, perfect.
So let me put it down.
Why don't we play the video?
Please play the video.
Well, they're saying respect the police. You never hear that in an Antifa rally. See how they're saying respect the police? Respect the police? Doesn't sound very insightful. Incitementful.
Let's stop the video at 13:59:53. Officer Hodges, let me ask you first. Do you see the numbers in the top right corner of the screen?
I do.
What are those numbers?
The first set of numbers is the date, 2021-0106. The second set of numbers is the time at which the recording was taken in the 24-hour clock, 13:59. This 12-hour clock would be 1:59 p.m.
Nope.
Now, in this point in the video, where are you headed?
Currently, we're headed toward the West Terrace.
And what types of things are people shouting in the video?
In the video, people are shouting at us, calling us oath breakers, traitors, telling us to remember our oaths. We're on the wrong side of history, that sort of thing.
And how did you interpret those words at the time?
At the time, I interpreted those words to mean that the people shouting us.
Objection, Your Honor. Seeking interpretation of those shouts is irrelevant.
No, this should be overruled. This will be overruled because it's his impression of what it meant.
Objection overruled.
That's a fair
I understood
overrule.
the shouts to mean that the people who were shouting at us, which was everyone in the mob that I could perceive, disapproved of us being there. They understood that we were
It's
there
the
to
best
protect the
one I
Capitol,
found so far.
which was antithetical to their goals. That by protecting the United States Capitol, we were somehow breaking our oaths to the Constitution.
I want to thank Sherry right here for calling my attention.
And why
to
did you and your
this
fellow
show.
officers have your hands on each other's shoulders in the video?
We're all watching this now here
We put our
because
hands
of
on each
her.
other's shoulders spontaneously
So,
as the crowd became more dense and
Tip of the
intense,
cap to
in an
you.
effort to try and keep ourselves from being separated.
Had you ever done that prior to January 6, 2021?
No, we had not.
Mr. Hain, please resume the video at timestamp 13:59:53.
There is no closed captioning option.
Let's pause the video at 14:00:35. Officer Hodges, could you describe what we just saw?
In the video, we were, my platoon, rather, we were making our way towards the West Terrace when we were attacked by the mob. I was assaulted in various ways that I've testified to, and someone attempted to steal my riot baton. I wrestled with control of the baton and was able to retain my weapon. When we fended off the initial assault, we were encircled by the mob, at which point they started yelling at us, telling us that we're on the wrong team, which suggested to me that they were going against our efforts to defend the United States Capitol.
Mr. Hain, please resume the video at 14:00:35. Let's pause the video at 14:01:20. Officer Hodges, do you see the man wearing a vest in the video?
I do.
What kind of vest is that?
It appears to be an external carrier vest designed to carry within it a ballistic panel that would protect the wearer from firearms. And judging from the way it's bulging outward, it appears to carry such a panel.
Okay, Mr. Hain, Please pull up what's been admitted as Exhibit 11 and hit pause. Hit pause. Officer Hodges, can you see the video on your screen?
I can.
What is this?
This further depicts the time in which we were making our way, or trying to fight off the mob and make our way to the West Terrace.
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Does the footage fairly and accurately depict the events you witnessed on January 6th?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, we would move to admit Exhibit 11.
Let's go back to 10. You asked to admit it. I didn't rule. Counsel for interviewer Trump, I think, wanted to wait to decide whether to make an objection.
We have no objection to Exhibit 10.
Okay, 10 is admitted. I will let you play 11, and then I'll let you give them an opportunity to make an objection.
I hope that helped
Sure.
the volume.
Please play Exhibit 11.
Well, thank you for the heads up, K-Jab, about where Jaffe, an Israeli soldier, was rescued. I need to, again, I can't really show this stuff here. I can't show violence here. So when they're showing videos, I've got to, block
Let's
it.
pause the video at 14:02:41.
It's just brave patriots defending America, Joe. That can't.
Yeah,
be,
I know, and
that's
YouTube
it.
doesn't like that.
Now would be appropriate time to move to admit, Your
Sorry,
Honor?
I'm back now.
Is that the end of the
That is the end of this clip, yes.
Hey, there you are.
Yes.
Exhibit 11 is admitted?
Officer Hodges, could you describe what we just saw?
Yes. I had attempted to forge a path through the mob for the rest of my platoon to follow so we could join the defense of the West Terrace. However, I looked back and saw that my platoon was again being assaulted by the mob. Their forward progress effectively halted.
Yeah, it was 9/11 times.
I backtracked, started pulling off members of the mob by their backpacks until someone observed me and then assaulted me as well. They tried to steal my riot baton again. We wrestled for control. I was elbowed. We went to the ground, kicked in the chest, at which point I ended up on my hands and knees with the medical mask I was wearing pulled up over my eyes. So I was blind for a moment.
And looking at Exhibit 11 at timestamp 14:02:41, what type of vest is the man wearing in the video?
The man appears to be wearing an external carrier vest designed to carry within it a ballistic panel. And again, judging from the way it's bulging outward, it appears to carry such a panel.
Your Honor, this video does actually contain more content on it, so I
It's
prematurely
not 100% clear that guy's wearing a loaded
frankly,
panel on here.
to explain myself. I thought that these videos were previously admitted, and so, could we watch the rest of the video and then I move to admit it again? Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Hain, please resume the video at timestamp 14:02:41.
Okay. Sadly,
Yeah. Sadly. Anyways, Joe, how are you doing? How's your weekend?
my week's great.
Hmm.
My week is going great. Look, I have a chance to cover a trial. That's always.
Yeah.
I wish it was. I wish it was not this, but
It's all right. So I had my
it looks like it's pretty calm now.
yeah. Yeah, so imagine having all these Q boomers being the shock
Pause
troops.
the video at 14:03:20. Officer Hodges, did you hear what the man said in the video?
I did.
What did he say?
He wanted to
Which
get me
man?
out of there. I told him, he asked me what he could do to help. I told him to leave. He said that ain't gonna happen. And he said it's gonna turn bad. And that the others were coming up from the back.
Oh,
And what
because
did
he
you
knew.
understand those words to mean?
Because he knew that guy was an expert.
His understanding is irrelevant. He is.
Did the orange man tell him to do this and say this to you? Otherwise, what's the point?
Testifies to what somebody said to him that he thought it meant.
Why is it relevant? The objection is relevance.
Yeah.
Idiot. He's such a bad
I
judge.
understood
We're an hour in and she's already like made like 3 bad calls.
He said that it was going to turn bad, which means that it was going to, he didn't think it was bad yet, and it was going to get worse. He said that the others were coming up from the back. This indicated to me that there was pre-planning, coordination, and that...
That's the stupidest thing. This is ridiculous.
They're coming up from the back.
is-
Yes, they're attacking the building from
How
the
is his
side.
speculation
You said
relevant?
leave,
Yes.
is that right?
That's correct.
Why did you say that?
Because aside from convincing other people to leave as well, that is the only thing he could do to help. His presence there was the biggest problem to us. He was a part of the mob, and the mob was the threat.
Officer, isn't it true that because you're
Mr.
cop, you're
Hain,
inherently
please pull
racist?
up Exhibit 12 and press pause.
Did you hit this man wearing black because you thought he was a black man?
No objection.
11's admitted.
And now, could we pull up Exhibit 12, Mr. Hain? Officer Hodges, can you see the video on your screen?
I can.
What is this?
This further depicts our time on the Capitol grounds as we make our way towards the West Terrace, we being the remnant of CD42 that was attacked.
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Does the footage fairly and accurately
kinda like
depict
what
what you
we're
witnessed
getting
on January
here.
6, 2021?
It does.
You know, I see a guy wearing a helmet and his gas mask to be safe.
57.
Safety first.
Yeah. It's obviously fear of what the police will do.
Yeah.
If it starts getting violent, I'm going to have to like just, yeah.
I see a police officer shoving into people with a stick.
Yeah.
He's carrying his truncheon and shoving people.
I don't think there's going to be too much of this in the trial because there's only 2 police officers testifying.
Do
The
they
rest
have
of
that?
them are more patriotic.
Is the other one testifying that loser who has the neck
Officer
tattoos?
Hodges, could you describe what we just saw?
Fanon.
I don't know.
Depicts me as I once again attempt to forge a path through the mob. The rest of my platoon follow as we make our way towards the West Terrace.
Your platoon? Are you part of a military organization?
I was able to push my way through. We made our way toward the area in front of the West Terrace, where we joined a police line.
And could you describe what you saw in the crowd as you ran through them?
In the crowd, I saw people destroying property, breaking down the bike rack style barriers into its poles, which I saw every day used as weapons. I saw an agitator with a megaphone, encouraging further violence. I saw munitions going off, chaos. No one obeying on lawful orders to go home.
And the people in the crowd you're running through, did every one of them try to physically attack you?
No,
So did the people just peacefully standing there impede your ability to do your job that day?
yeah,
How's that?
even the people who were not, I didn't observe attacking us, made it difficult for us to.
How dare them? How dare they?
Engage those who were violent,
How dare they attend the rally? You're in my way.
because we had no idea who was going to come out, who would not. The crowd made it so that the mob, when they fell back, had a defense that made it very difficult for us to deal with.
And did you hear the alarm sound playing in the video?
I did.
What was that?
That is our ORAD.
That was the based alarm.
Like a loud speaker system. It's deployed. when a First Amendment assembly becomes unlawful or is unlawful, it broadcasts a very loud order to disperse, and it's very, very audible.
And where the crowd was standing in the area depicted in the video, was that area open to the general public?
No.
What, if any, chemical irritants did the police deploy that day?
That day, I understand the police deployed OC spray or pepper spray and CS gas or tear gas.
Tear gas.
In your experience as a member of the civil disturbance unit, what do crowds typically do after the police deploy chemical irritants?
In my experience, crowds typically disperse when confronted with chemical irritants. It's very persuasive in getting them to change their minds about what they're trying to do. Gets them to break up into individuals instead of continuing to function as a single group.
Mr. Hain, please resume the video at timestamp 14:04:30.
Again, if there's any violence, I'm gonna have to like hide this thing.
Let's stop at 14:04:45.
That is exactly what he said. Like,
Officer Hodges, looking at the video,
people
where on the
are my
Capitol
way.
grounds are you located at this point in the video?
At this point in the video, I am in front of the West Terrace.
And is there a police line shown in the video?
There is.
What, if anything, happened to that police line that day?
Later on, the mob was able to break through the police line.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd move to admit Exhibit 12.
Exhibit 12 is, are you going to be moving on to another exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break from 10:15 to 10:30. We're going to resume comment afterwards.
All right, so they take a break now for like 17 minutes or so. And we're going to jump ahead.
So at 10:30,
How far behind are we?
10:15. We are roughly an hour behind.
Oh, okay.
I figure
This time we would
I'll catch up by their lunch break.
Makes sense.
I'm playing at
Exhibit
I'm playing at
13.
an hour and a quarter.
This
At
is
1.25
Yeah.
speed.
Sorry, guys. No lunch for you. No lunch breaks.
Mr.
No one
Hain,
for me.
could you pull up Exhibit 14 at timestamp 14:25:11? Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
I do.
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Does the footage fairly and
Oh,
accurately depict the
foundation.
events of
What a nice
January 6,
change.
2021 as you remember them?
It does.
Mr. Hain, please play the video.
Like the foundations of our democracy, Joe. They were assaulted.
Officer Hodges, did you hear the man speaking in the video?
This is so stupid.
How did you interpret his statements at the time?
It's like some guy screaming, this means everything. Like, this is why Trump should be kept off the
Yes.
ballot, because some guy was screaming. This is so
He
stupid.
screams at me much like my wife's boyfriend screams at me when I come into the room too early.
This is so stupid.
Then
Yes.
he'll run over us. He then references our guns, saying that, do you think those little pea shooters are going to stop us? This
Ooh.
was particularly concerning
Yes.
to me, that it meant that he was willing to withstand lethal force that we might use, and in his efforts to achieve his objective.
Your Honor, at this time, we would move to admit Exhibit 14.
exhibit 14 is admitted.
Mr. Hain, please pull up Exhibit 15 at timestamp 14:28:45. Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
I do.
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this video prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Does the video fairly and accurately depict the events of January 6, 2021 as you recall them?
It does.
Mr. Hain, please play the video.
Look at him just
Oh,
beating unarmed people.
I can't watch that. I can't watch that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just
Sir,
want-
why are you beating unarmed protesters?
I gotta tell you, Americans should pray that this lawsuit is not successful, because if this happens in multiple states,
Yeah.
we're gonna see a lot of these.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're gonna see a lot of these.
Not going to be unarmed. I'll say that much.
We're gonna, God forbid. I don't want to see it.
Yeah. Well.
And this channel does not promote violence. YouTube wants me to tell you we do not promote violence, and I do support your right to peacefully assemble
Yes.
and march peacefully. Here's my little dog whistle.
Peacefully. Yes.
Let's see.
And then I want to ask him afterwards, like, do you feel like a little bitch all these unarmed people whooped your guys' asses?
I think it's stopped for now.
I mean, you're wearing all this riot armor and these people kicked your ass, officer. How does that feel?
There's people down on the floor. I think that's from the tear gas or pepper spray that they were using.
Officer, how do you feel for beating that poor woman down there at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah,
We're stopping the video at 14:30:33. Officer Hodges, could you describe what we just saw?
How does Constitution apply to U.S. occupied territories?
The police line in front of the U.S. Terrace at the time.
No, the U.S. Constitution governs any U.S. occupied territories. Over here, we're dealing with state constitution of Colorado. That's why we're in a state court. But their constitution likely mirrors the U.S. Constitution.
They continued to assault us, push us back. We were beaten, pushed, kicked. I was overwhelmed by members of the mob, being pushed back by several at once until I was pushed back against that waist back high wall you see in the video. I was held there while one of the assailants attempted to gouge out my eye.
Did he?
And, I was able to repel the attackers, and we were forced to retreat.
I saved the day.
Officer Hodges, how did the assailant try to gouge out your eye?
He grabbed my face and stuck his thumb in my eye and pushed it in and tried to dig it out.
Sounds hot.
So the timestamp at the
there.
start of this video was around 2:28 p.m. Is that about when the time the mob started to surge? Had you ever seen a crowd break through a police line like that before? To your knowledge, prior to this point, had the
What
DC
is the
Metropolitan
point of
Police
that?
Department ever had to
I think it was
fall back
unprecedented.
from the police line because a crowd broke through it?
No,
Did you hear the man in the video say, "This is our house"?
I did.
What did you understand those words to mean?
Oh, thank you. You're right. I'll correct that.
Sir, do you agree this was a pretty based event?
You may testify as to what you understood it to be.
At the time, I understood the assailants' words, "This is our house," to mean that they had the right to be there, that they believed they had the right to be there, that they had the right to enter whenever they wanted, and they had the right to decide what went on, and more pertinently, what did not go on inside the United States Capitol.
Over the course of the day, did you hear other individuals say, "This is our house"? Your Honor, at
How
this time,
dare
would
they
you
think that
admit,
it's that-
yes,
that-
15?
How dare they?
Yes. Sir, who owns the house? Who paid for it?
Mr. Hain, please pull up Exhibit 16, starting at timestamp 14:30:44, and pause the video. Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
I do.
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Is this footage a fair and accurate depiction of the events of January 6, 2021, as you recall them?
It is.
Please play the video.
Sorry. I just saved you seeing like man crack though, so in that sense, you're welcome.
What are you doing? What are you guys doing?
I think we're good now.
Officer Hodges, could you describe what we just saw?
As we were retreating from the police line being broken on in front of the West Terrace, I observed a man who was on the ground and had a large.
I would love to, but then I won't be here tomorrow to stream the next day because I'll get a strike and I'll be off for a week.
While another officer took possession of the knife.
To your knowledge, was this man arrested at the scene?
No.
Why not?
As I previously testified, the current conditions that you see in the video made it untenable to make arrests. We could not guard him adequately with our manpower or provide for his safety, security, and medical treatment.
Your Honor,
you were
at this time, we
attacking
move
him.
to admit Exhibit 16.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 16 is admitted.
Mr.
There's
Haynes,
a box of Kleenexes
pull
with
up
him.
Exhibit 17, starting at timestamp 14:32:15, and press pause. Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
Yes,
Is this your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
it is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the events of January 6, 2021, as you recall them?
It is.
Please play the video.
Seriously.
Officers, you running away like a little girl. Officer, do you have an ouchie boo boo?
Thank you so much, man.
Officer Hodges, just to orient us, can you describe where you started at the beginning of the video and then where you ended up?
At the beginning of the video, I was in front of the West Terrace. I ascended the stairs of the inaugural stage up to the West Terrace proper.
And looking at the timestamp currently showing on Exhibit 17, it says 14:13:11. So this is approximately 2:33 p.m. Is that right?
14:30. 14:33, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Correct.
And by this time, 2:33 p.m., were the police still in control of where you were standing on the West Terrace of the Capitol?
Yes.
Were the police able to maintain control of the West Terrace of the Capitol the rest of the day?
No.
From them or from me? Because there's no closed caption, Eric.
Your Honor, at this time, we would move to admit Exhibit 17.
No objection.
Exhibit 17 is
If it's live, sometimes there's no closed captioning available.
Mr. Hain, please pull up Exhibit 18, starting at timestamp 14:36:10.
You could be asking, like, I think it's because it's body cam footage. The other
Officer
stuff they had
Hodges, do you see the
text
video on your screen?
They wrote down. I don't know, though.
Is this more of your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
It is.
Did you review this footage prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the events of January 6, 2021, as you recall them?
It is.
Please play the video.
It's not so fun when you mace people, huh?
Let's pause the video at 14:37:06.
I'm just saying that's
Officer
an
Hodges,
introspective
just to
moment.
orient us again, can you walk us through where you started at the beginning of the video
Yeah.
and then where you
God, this shit's awful. Maybe we should use it on people.
On the West Terrace. I then entered the doorway and into the tunnel that connects the West Terrace to the room that is the crypt.
And who was coughing in the video?
That was,
Why were you coughing?
I was experiencing the effects of CS gas or tear gas in the air.
And who fired off that?
Your Honor, at
Well,
this
yeah,
time, we
there,
move
yeah.
to admit,
Tear gas
Exhibit 18.
yourself.
Mr. Hain, please pull up Exhibit 19, starting at timestamp 19:54:38. Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
Yes.
Is this more of your body camera footage from January 6, 2021?
Yes,
Did you review this video prior to your testimony today?
I did.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the events of January 6, 2021, as you recall them?
Yes.
Could you tell us where you're located at this point in the video? Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Could we please play the video?
I feel like I have to hide this.
Now, Officer Hodges, could you tell us where you're located at this point in the video?
At this point in the video, I'm in the tunnel that connects the West Terrace to the crypt.
So you were on the other side of the tunnel that you had previously seen walking through in the prior video?
Correct.
And can you describe what was happening in the video?
In the video, we are forming a line inside the tunnel, attempting to defend that entrance from the mob.
And could you describe the scene inside of that tunnel?
The scene inside the tunnel was a sensory overload. It was chaotic. It was extremely loud. There was alarms going off. Lots of people yelling. There were chemical munitions in the air, strobe lights, and intense body-to-body contact. We, as you got closer to where the assailants in the police line was, the more compressed everyone got until it was a lot of pressure being exerted on you.
By this point in the day, around 2:55 p.m., had the mob taken control of the West Terrace of the Capitol?
It was a new poll I just put up.
What was your belief of what would happen if the mob broke through that police line in that tunnel?
We, at the time,
It would end democracy.
the mob was able to gain entry.
It would be just like the Handmaid's Tale.
We
Or
They
it'd
don't
be
really.
like, it would be like when, who's the bad guy in Harry Potter? Dumbledore?
had access to
Voldemort.
itself.
It'd be like when Voldemort took over. It would have been horrible.
Threats against whom?
Congress, Vice President.
Did
So
you hear the officers in the video
answer
say
your
interlock the
question-
shields?
you have to show that the words were
What does that mean?
designed to
Some of our police shields
cause
are designed
imminent-
by their shape
were purposefully intended to cause
block
imminent
each other when placed
unlawful
each other in a certain
conduct
way. This allows them to function as a single
under the Brandenburg
shield,
standard.
and thus eliminates the vulnerability of
Imminent lawless action.
shields.
Imminent lawless action.
Yes,
Prior
another
to
Ohio.
January
Another
6,
case from
2021,
Ohio.
have you ever used
has to have that
interlock the
intent.
shield function?
I have not.
At this time, Your Honor, we move to admit Exhibit
You got yourself a
19.
little shake weight there.
No, I'm waiting for an answer on a motion, so I'm
More exactly like-
painting a model for a minute.
I'm not sure I understand this tunnel. Like, a tunnel from where to where, and
It's common.
They like saying January 6th because they think that sounds scary.
Connects the outside, the terrace where I was, to the inside of the Capitol.
That's what the state wants. They want everyone to fear the day.
in my mind.
You should be proud of it. January 6th is an historic day.
Mr. Hain, please pull up exhibit
I don't think they
20
should have
and
gone
pause the video.
inside. I mean, that was a mistake.
Officer Hodges, do you see the video on your screen?
I do.
And what does this video show?
This video shows the inside of the tunnel connecting the West Terrace to the crypt. Well, we were defending it from the mob.
You know, my son was born on January 6th, a
Did
year
you
later.
review this video prior to your testimony today?
My grandson.
And is it a fair and accurate depiction
I'd
of the
say,
events
damn,
of
Joe, you
January
keeping
6th,
at work.
2021 as you remember them?
My
Please play the
second, my
video.
second grandson.
Did you tell him that? Did you tell him that his birthday can never be happy? He must always be solemn. He must always think about what happened that day. You mace him every January 6th to remind him.
Happy birthday to you. I think for his birthday cake, I want to get Officer Daniel Hodges' face and cut it.
Oh, you should get him a Capitol building for his cake.
On a cake, obviously. On a cake.
That'd be great.
What?
Yeah, or a Capitol building cake. Find a baker. No, I don't support Trump people on my cake.
Like such a sellout, this guy. I gotta tell you, the officers seem more violent than the crowd.
I said, though, thank God nobody in there fell down or they got trampled.
Maybe he incited the officers.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so that's Daniel Hodges himself there. I cannot show you. This doesn't look...
Well, I'm screaming like a girl. Officer, why are you obstructing people from addressing their members of Congress? You love democracy, but yet you oppose it. How curious.
I hate YouTube.
That's why when I did my
All right, this just looks like a crowd of people to me.
yeah. Just people in line to get tickets for Taylor Swift.
It could be. This channel does not condone violent activity of any kind. Does not encourage it. And I mean that sincerely.
Ooh, hey now. Gonna have to rock the boat horn for a minute.
Oh, you the man. God bless you, Little Rock. Thank you so much for your support, brother.
A
Only
red
about
killer.
20 minutes before I have to leave for trial. Definitely watch Rain there later. I want to drop your C note as I've been absent with work for a while. Well, you keep at it.
Yeah.
Our brother in practice.
Yes. Red killer. I've never seen that before. What's that mean? I'm just kidding.
What?
I love how the guy's got his shield now.
Officer Hodges, can you describe what we just saw?
The video depicts the time at which I had moved to the front of the police line inside the tunnel connecting the West Terrace to the crypt. And when I was attempting to repel the attackers, I had positioned myself in front of a metal rigid door frame and attempted to use it to support my efforts to push forward. Unfortunately, at that time, the momentum had shifted, and our assailants had me pushed back and pinned me
2 hours.
against the door frame with a police shield. At that time, one of my assailants took advantage of my vulnerability, grabbing my gas mask on my face, pushing and pulling rapidly, effectively punching me in the face several times, and then ripping it off my head. He was able to
Punching in the face like there's a 41% chance you beat your spouse. Don't Google that in 41% on police and 41% on Google, guys.
Little Rock man for 7 months. Yes. Yes, you do get a free chat.
all the effects of the day, various assaults, the head trauma, just
Member of the following.
chemical irritants, and crushing pressure from the crowd. And
Not that I'm the leader of the following. I'm just a follower, just like you. And it's very much not cult type of cult.
I was still trapped though, so I did the only thing I could do, call for help.
I'll be right back.
Fortunately, other officers were able to extricate me from that position, and I fell back to the rear of the tunnel.
Did you hear the mob shouting "heave ho"?
I thought that was the police screaming
What
heave
was your
ho.
understanding of what they were doing?
The mob shouting "heave ho," I understood to be them coordinating their efforts in order to break through our defensive line. They were synchronizing their movement to multiply the force that applied and use their bodies to break through our line and gain access to the Capitol.
Now, the body camera video we previously watched, Exhibit 19, showed you in the tunnel around 2:55 p.m., according to the timestamp on that video. Is that right?
That's correct.
Approximately how long after 2:55 p.m. Did the events shown in this video, Exhibit 20, take place?
Well, you're too kind, brother.
Approximately 10, 15 minutes.
3:05 or 3:10?
Welcome to the following
Your Honor,
10
at this time, we
members.
would move to admit.
Oh, and good luck on your trial today.
Admitted.
Officer Hodges, how long did you remain in the tunnel after 3:10?
I did not remain in the tunnel for very long at that point. I fell back to
Welcome aboard Freedom Forever. The
The
following is not a cult type of cult. It's the least culty cult you've ever seen.
The fight was still ongoing, and we needed effort.
There's no spaceships,
in the defense of the
tracksuits,
Capitol. So
no harming others,
I,
no self-harm.
went back out there. I no longer had my gas mask, and
You won't even know you're in a cult.
I was afraid I would be a liability in the
Because
tunnel.
it's that not
So
culty
I
type of cult.
ascended a stair nearby, back out to the West Terrace, and joined the police line that was there. I remained on that line until reinforcements started to arrive from outside agencies, at which point I returned to the crypt and waited there.
Mr. Hain, could you please pull down the video? Officer Hodges, when you left the tunnel, did you still have your body camera on you?
I did not.
What happened to it?
It went into silent mode when I got violent.
Or was ripped off my chest where it's mounted and fell to the ground where it remained until another officer found it the following day.
And did you retrieve it at some point from that officer?
Through my agency, it returned to my possession, yes.
And so what did you do for the remainder of the day after you left the crypt?
Back in the crypt, I waited while members of my platoon gradually gathered, and we waited until we were all assembled, at which point we stood by, waiting for further orders. We stayed there until around.
Thank you so much. I
midnight,
appreciate
At
you.
which point we were told that we were able to clear the Capitol. We left the Capitol grounds. Those who needed immediate medical attention went to hospitals. Those of us who did not were still on duty. We reported to downtown and awaited further orders. I believe at about 1 a.m., eventually we were told we could go home. And we went back to our district from there and we went our separate ways.
How would you characterize the events you witnessed on January 6, 2021?
The events on January 6, 2021 at the United States Capitol were horrific. It was a terrorist attack on the United States of America.
Terrorist attack!
Assault on democracy,
Oh my God.
an attempt to prevent
Terrorists!
peaceful transfer of power.
About how many protest events have you worked as a member of the Civil Disturbance Unit?
Dozens.
How did the events of January 6, 2021 compare to those other experiences you've had as a member of the CDU?
Well, this is the only one that gave me national
Six are
attention,
Incomparable to any other riots or protests or First Amendment assemblies I have policed. There is just no comparison in the level of violence.
You missed him calling this a terrorist attack.
And what were you fighting for on January 6th?
You're muted,
On
brother.
January 6th, I was fighting for democracy.
Oh, took my breath away. I wasn't muted.
On January 6th, I was fighting for democracy.
I was fighting for democracy.
the safety
I was fighting
and
for
well-being
democracy.
of
Go faster up a Black Hawk in Pakistan if you want to fight democracy, son.
Yeah, seriously.
that day. I was fighting for myself, for my colleagues,
Yeah.
and everyone
It was all about the guy next to me.
who participates in our democracy.
When did you abandon all
Thank you,
sense of
Officer Hodges.
dignity?
No further questions.
As a member of the DC police, how many innocent black men have you put in prison? That's true, though. I mean, him and Fanone, that guy with the neck tattoo, he was a narc. It's like, so you enforce drug laws to put black people in prison. So,
All right, let's hear this cross.
Here
Go
we
get
go.
him. They're going
Here
to
we
hit him
go.
about how much he hates Trump. He's out of all the hundreds of officers, 2 are willing to come forward here.
yeah.
I may want that a little later, but not yet.
Don't worry about that. I'll come back to that.
Officer Hodges, there were multiple demonstrations.
Mr. Shaw, can you move the microphone here taller so we can?
Sure.
Speak into it?
Sure thing. Is that better?
Question for you here, Sean.
Officer Hodges, how many demonstrations were there in Washington, D.C.?
You don't need to be combat ready to place IEDs, honey.
I'm not aware of what transpired at the Capitol and the one at the others.
Are you aware that there were,
It's very narrow. It's very long and narrow.
I'm fit enough to load up. I'm
Focus.
fit enough to handle bags of fertilizer.
are you aware that there were people who spoke at other venues in Washington, D.C. that day?
No,
Are you aware that there were protesters who did not attend any of the events where people spoke?
no.
You said that you thought there were, based on your view of the crowd that day, there were at least thousands of people present. Is that correct?
Correct.
How many people attended demonstrations in Washington, D.C. overall that day?
I don't have the exact number.
Have you heard any estimates of the number who were in attendance at various demonstrations that day?
At the Capitol, I heard, or I read of a number around 9,400.
This would be a really good question.
Okay. Have you heard an overall number in excess of 120,000?
No.
And you have a video of 2
Is
people.
it your position
More
that
people
all of the
yelling?
people who attended demonstrations in Washington, D.C. that day were members of what you called the mob?
If
Good
there
question.
are demonstrations that were not part of the assault on the Capitol, then no.
Does everyone who comes to the Capitol assault the Capitol?
So the mob, if I understand you correctly, you're defining as just the subset of people who assaulted the Capitol?
Correct.
Tell me where that.
And as you sit here today, are you able to tell me what percentage of what you call the mob attended President Trump's speech at the Ellipse?
No,
6 million.
Tell me what percentage of what you call the mob listened to President Trump's speech at the Ellipse?
no.
Whoops, we have a little nexus problem here.
Just a bit.
Now,
I got the redirect though. Is the Orange Man bad?
mob
Yes.
said this,
Nothing further.
I saw the mob do this, or words to that effect. You remember that?
Yes.
Fair to say what you're really saying is, I saw individuals in what I call the mob do this or say this, correct?
A mob is composed of individuals, so yes.
And there were other people who were standing there who did not do or say those things, right?
That's correct.
And some
Probably.
portion of the people who were standing there were there and did not physically assault anybody, right?
I did not, there were times where I observed people and they were not assaulting anyone, correct?
And there were other demonstrators in Washington, D.C. that day who did not form part of the mob as you define it, correct?
I'm only aware of what transpired at the Ellipse and at the Capitol.
Now, fair to say that you were not able to read minds, right?
That is fair to say.
And just by looking at someone who was there that day, you weren't able to tell if that person attended the speech at the Ellipse, correct?
That's correct.
Or if that person had heard the speech, right?
Correct.
And the point he's getting at here is,
Or for that matter,
we have no reason to think
if
at
that
all
person had
that they were incited by
ever
Trump.
read a tweet by President Trump, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if any of them were ever on Twitter. Maybe none of them heard of Twitter.
Would you put up Exhibit 14, please? And just pause it right at the very beginning. Whoever was working the... Yeah, okay, great. Joanna's okay. So, for example, if we look at this picture...
Later, brother. Thank you so much.
You can't
Really appreciate
tell
your
whether
support.
this woman on the left...
I'm going to be here every day
You can't tell
for
whether
this
she
week.
attended
I'm going to be here all, for the entire trial.
the speech on the Ellipse, correct?
I cannot tell that by looking at her.
Or in any other way, right?
Correct.
And the man
I
behind
think this
the,
trial's supposed to be 5 days,
person
they said.
a few moments later was going to yell at you. You can't tell whether he attended that speech, right?
Correct.
Or any of the other people in that picture, right?
Correct.
Or in fact, any of the other people in any of the other film exhibits that we saw earlier today, right?
I cannot identify individuals who attended the speech and then were at the Capitol.
Or who read any of President Trump's tweets, correct?
Correct.
Now, I wanted to clear up a couple of things that just wasn't clear about from your testimony. At one point, you said that and I forget the exact name of it, but you said there was a gun unit.
Gun recovery unit?
Gun recovery unit, that's it, thank you. And you said, I believe, that they identified people who either had weapons or who they thought might have weapons. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know how many people have been prosecuted for firearms crimes arising out of the January 6th demonstration?
No.
Would it surprise you to learn that it is a total of 5? And that one of those people arrived on January 7th in Washington, D.C.?
Whoops.
So it was really 4 on January 6th?
Okay.
And do you know how many people how many demonstrators discharged a firearm in Washington, D.C. on January 6th?
I do not know.
Didn't know
Would
of
it
any.
surprise you to learn it was 0?
No.
And then I just,
Worst
I believe you
insurrection
said that
ever.
you thought you had suffered a concussion. Is that correct? Because you had a headache for 2 weeks?
That's correct.
Okay. Were you diagnosed with a concussion by a medical professional?
That's a good question.
I went to the police and fire clinic and they sent me to Washington Hospital Center, which is a hospital in Washington, D.C. Received MRI and I wasn't diagnosed with a concussion, but
They said it's all in my head.
they asked me if I wanted to do any further tests for that, and I said no, because if I was or wasn't, the course of treatment is the same.
So you didn't stick around for the treatment?
That's how
Doesn't
serious
sound
it
that
was.
serious. Yeah.
By the way, whenever someone is an attorney and someone getting a personal injury attorney, they always want them to get as much treatment as possible.
Yeah.
Lack of treatment shows you're not really that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I have no further questions for you, sir. Thank you.
Even though it's very brief, I like his work and I'm okay with it being short. It almost shows he's kind of irrelevant.
Any questions from Secretary Griswold? Any redirect?
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
Officer Hodges, you testified that you were initially stationed on Constitution Avenue. Is that right?
That's
On,
correct.
on
This is a
January
good point
6th.
about the cell suppression.
And that was between the
And
hours
none
of
of them-
7 a.m. and
none of them
1:30
saw
p.m.
his
Is that
tweets.
accurate?
That's accurate.
And during that time, did you observe the crowd walking, or your testimony earlier today was that you observed the crowd walking from the ellipse area to the Capitol. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Officer Hodges, thank you.
Did anybody tell them to walk from the ellipse area?
This country.
Who did you hear
Well,
it?
he said we're going to march peacefully. So-
Yeah, but that's I'd still make him have to say it. Did you hear this at the time or after the fact? I just wanted to say, oh, I heard things.
Your Honor, our next
I gotta
witness
go call
is
CNN for my interview.
remote, and so it might just take about 1 minute. I think they're all ready. We just have to
Oh, speaking of that, yes.
let them in, and they are. It will now be under Congressman Eric Swalwell.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's not-
Congressman Eric Swalwell.
I wanted to be the guy from Colorado who was famously hiding upstairs in the balcony. You know, they made me wear the stupid bag on my head, so I looked like a moron to everyone. It was horrible.
Yes,
Oh, it's-
Congressman Eric Swalwell is supposed to testify here.
Is Fang Fang in the room with him right now, or which Chinese officer is?
Is she still alive? I remember reading somewhere that,
Oh,
that she
oh,
got killed.
well, I'm sure the PRC took care of her. The MSS doesn't tolerate failure very well.
So let's see who's on the stand. Oh, it's good. Let me see. Hold on a second. Let me change my banner here. Oh, it's gonna be Swalwell on camera. This is hilarious.
Hope he doesn't fart this time on camera.
Oh my gosh. It's a cup. I'm sliding a cup on a table.
Mhm.
Should I move? I'll try and
Oh, where did that lady go who was like making fun of me and said she could introduce me to some men? I mean, I don't understand
was
why
that
that lady
Linda?
thought.
Okay.
Oh, this is so good.
Good afternoon, Congressman. Can you please?
Well, Rashida
introduce
Tlaib
yourself?
come on to scream about Hamas.
Oh,
That'd be
sorry.
perfect. She's like, "Oh, wrong interview."
Oh. Well, and we have a siren again.
It's the bullshit alarm.
Congressman Swalwell, can you hear us?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. Will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear under the
very
knowledge
small
of the
hand.
law that the testimony you will give
Why is his pinky all crooked?
the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I mean, like this. Come on. Like what's that?
Good afternoon, Congressman.
Is that the
Swalwell.
Epstein handshake?
Introduce yourself.
Dog whistle.
Good afternoon. My name is Terrace Swalwell, and I represent the 14th Congressional District of Colorado.
How long have you been a member of Congress?
Going on 11 years, elected in 2012 and sworn in on January 3, 2013.
We got it. Were you at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021?
Yes, it was.
And what was supposed to happen in Congress that day?
We were sworn in 3 days earlier. On the 6th, was the day
Hey,
where
thank you.
Congress
It's not gonna be boring. It's gonna be fun.
voted to certify the electoral college votes that were sent from December after being ratified by the states.
I'm going to ask you some more questions about January 6th, 2021, but first I'd like to ask you some questions about prior presidential elections. When, if ever, had you participated in
Is he a historian now?
electoral votes for president before January 6th, 2021?
I have also participated in the January 6, 2013 certification for the re-election of President Barack Obama. And I also participated on January 6, 2017.
It's not a charge. This is not criminal. This is an attempt. This is a petition to keep him off the ballot.
Oh my God, Joe! You know
And
what they
does
can do
Congress
now?
always
Under the
count
14th
the votes
Amendment.
on January 6th?
1 second.
If
4 years on January 6. Again, new Congress sworn in on the 3rd, And then on the 6th is when the certification.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got it. When you were there in
In
2016,
experience,
did
what
people
is the
obstruct the
process for
election?
counting and
Trump?
certification
Ooh,
of
I like that.
electoral votes on January
Oh
6th?
God.
Largely ceremonial in that the Congress convenes.
Really?
It's called a joint session in the House and the Senate.
That's a great question, Sean.
Congress, Vice President of the United States, the President of the Senate.
The audio is enhanced. I'm going to raise it up a little higher, the volume.
And each state alphabetically has.
This is the best audio we have.
If there's an objection, you need somebody to meet your objection from the other chamber. So, for example, if a House member objects, a senator would also have to object, and then both bodies would go back to their chambers and debate the objection, and then come back for resuming the count.
And how are those objections resolved?
They're resolved through debate and then a vote.
And I think you testified about this, but what role does the vice president play in those proceedings generally?
As the president of the Senate, the vice president presides over the count. There are tellers who are seated just below the vice president from both chambers, both parties. They tally the counts that are sent from the states, and the vice president literally, kind of like an award show, opens up the count.
Then why did you change the law to restrict his ability to do anything more than act like an MC at
In
an award show?
2016, were there objections to the counting and certification of electoral votes from any state?
Do you mean in 2017?
Yes, I'm sorry, arising out of the 2016 election, so on January 6, 2017.
I do recall there was at least one, perhaps more Democratic House objections, but I also recall that there was no senator to sign off, so to speak, or co-sign on the objection, and so we never adjourned for debate.
And so what happened with those objections?
I remember Vice President Biden was in the chamber, and Vice President Biden asked if there was a senator who also objected. No senator objected, and the Vice President would open up the envelope or look at the votes sent from the state, and they would just alphabetically proceed to the next state.
And did you object to the counting or certification of any electoral votes?
Not in 2013 and not in 2017.
You recall any of the objectors in 2017, on January 6, 2017, suggesting that then Vice President Biden, as president of the Senate, could have rejected any of the electoral votes submitted by the states?
Then why did you change the law if not?
I do not recall that ever coming up in any caucus,
Then why were they opposing it if they didn't want to change it?
any public record.
And
Make a
what do you
question.
recall, if anything, about anyone suggesting that then Vice President Biden, as president of the Senate, could declare Hillary Clinton the winner of the 2016 election?
My recollection, that was never discussed by any of my.
Then why were they opposing it?
There were no other slates of electors there.
Before late
There were no
2020 or
alternate states.
early 2021.
Yeah, but they were demanding he
Ever
didn't follow
heard
the
anyone
vote, so it's like,
suggest
what do you want him to do?
Vice President, as president of the Senate, had discretion to reject electoral votes from states?
I would not hear that line of argument until after the 2020 election from the former President Donald Trump.
And did then Vice President Biden try to do any of those things during the counting and certifying of the 2016 presidential election?
Objection relevance.
He did not. If there was not a senator to match a House member's objection, he moved on with the count.
Do you recall any candidate or colleague suggesting that Congress should ignore the Constitution and certify the election for the winner of the 2016 popular vote?
I don't recall that.
And did any person supporting any candidate for president, to your knowledge, attack the Capitol on January 6th, 2017?
That definitely did not happen on January 6th, 2017.
He fabricated
And
evidence.
are you aware of anyone
in the
ever
second
attacking the
impeachment.
Capitol during Congress's counting and
Yes, he did.
certification of presidential electoral votes in the history of our country
I
prior
hope
to
they ask him
January
about that.
6th, 2021?
certainly not in my lifetime.
That's part of the credibility card, Tim Crow.
Yeah.
I now want to turn to the 2020 election. Did you have any concerns in the weeks and months leading up to the 2020 presidential election about whether Mr. Trump would accept the results of the election if he lost?
Man, I wish I could cross him on this.
The evening of the election, when a statement was made by the president early in the morning, essentially, or not essentially, he was saying that the election was rigged. And then, and to be honest, prior to the election, the president would not honor reporters' requests to accept the outcome of the election if he lost. Then, of course, on the night of the election,
Me too, very much.
first public statement,
Yeah.
I believe it was rigged. And then in the weeks after the media declared Joe Biden as the president-elect and the state certified the election outcomes and
Apparently.
lawsuits that the president had all been dismissed in the courts.
Good work dancing around
Ramped
YouTube.
up his rhetoric in public appearances and on Twitter. And one that I recall was an invitation in mid-December via Twitter for people to
As long as it's consistent with the Constitution.
and stating in the tweet, will be wild.
You testified just there that there were legal challenges that you were aware of brought by Mr. Trump to the 2020 election. By December 14th, 2020, are you aware of what the status of those legal challenges was?
By December 14th, if I recall, is the date where the states were certifying their counts. Every challenge to the states counting and doing their certification had been dismissed or dropped by presidents.
Following the state's certification of electoral votes
I
on
think that's
December
factually
14th,
accurate.
2020, what was your understanding as to whether Mr. Trump had any further legal avenues to challenge the 2020 election?
My understanding is the next step in the process was the January 6th certification and then the January 20 inauguration for President-elect Biden. That was it. They had been exhausted.
Let's turn now to January 6th, 2021. What was your role in the counting and certification process on January 6th, 2021?
I was going to sit there like a
I was
doofus.
told the day before by Speaker Pelosi that she would like me to preside as the speaker designate at noon on January 6th to gavel us in, so to speak. And so the day starts, every congressional day starts with the speaker gaveling the Congress in. And so I gavel us in, led us in pledge allegiance. There was a new chaplain to the Congress, and asked the chaplain as we do every opening session, asked the chaplain to lead us in prayer. And then I read an appointment of the tellers that each side, each party, each chamber had designated to participate in the count on January 6th. And then I adjourned, and all of that lasted no more.
I'm going to back you up just briefly.
Look at the banner.
What did you do that morning before the certification process began?
I ran from the residence I have in Washington, D.C. to the Capitol and then back. It's a run I do often. And I recall on the run back from the Capitol, actually running up North Capitol, seeing dozens of individuals carrying signs that read "Stop the Steal" and wearing body armor and military fatigues. And I remember pulling down the cap that I was wearing, pulling it over my face because I didn't want to be seen by this crowd or recognized by this crowd. But it certainly just gave me an unsettling feeling about the direction that it was headed.
Did you watch any of Mr. Trump's speech on the ellipse that day?
I did. Once I returned to the Capitol, and after I opened the session, I was on the floor with my Democratic colleagues, and many of us had our phones out. We were watching the speech on the floor. We would step off the floor into this area called a cloakroom, which is just footsteps from the floor. And there were televisions on in the cloakroom playing the speech from the president and his supporters at the ellipse.
And what was your reaction to that speech or the parts that you saw of it?
Well, in the weeks before January 6th, the president had fired up his supporters, claimed that the election was rigged, said the 6th was going to be wild, and it came together on the 6th. Just from what I saw, individuals on the streets of Washington, and then what I saw in the speech, it appeared that an angry mob had assembled around the Capitol and near the White House. And when the president said that his supporters must fight like hell and they won't have a country anymore, that worried me because we were undergoing the process certifying the election loss. And when he aimed them at the Capitol by saying that he was in solidarity going to the Capitol with them, that we're going to go to the Capitol, a lot of us in the cloakroom looked at each other in a
5 days.
What does this mean?
And I plan to cover all of it.
Kind of feel.
So how did the counting and certification of electoral votes on January 6, 2021 go?
So after I recessed, we took a break for about 50 minutes, and then Speaker Pelosi and Vice President Pence, the President of the Senate, would next reconvene the House and the Senate in the House chamber. And as I said, it begins alphabetically. So on the Democratic side, because of COVID, only members of leadership and members from the states that were going to have to defend the vote were on the House floor. Any other Democrat would have to watch in the gallery. So there were no more than 24 or so of myself and others on the House floor. And I should have added at that time I was in House leadership. And so Arizona was, the first state to be challenged. And if I recall, Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona challenged the Arizona vote. The vice president asked if there was a senator who would co-sign the challenge, and I believe Senator Cruz from Texas signed off. And so we adjourned the joint session, meaning the senators left to go to their own chamber for debate. We stayed in our chamber, and Speaker Pelosi took the gavel to kick off the debate on the matter of Arizona.
At some point thereafter, you learned that rioters had breached the Capitol, correct?
Myself and everyone around us on the floor had our phones out and were watching intently on what was happening around the Capitol. We were also receiving a number of Capitol police alerts. There's an internal email system for members of staff, and the alerts were telling us about the mob that was assembling around the Capitol office buildings that were closed, suspected pipe bombs around the Capitol that had been discovered. And so we were focused on the debate, but also security posture, whether it was watching Twitter or receiving the Capitol police alerts, was also right in front of us in my handheld devices.
And about what time was this happening?
This was between 1 and 2 o'clock. As we watched either people who were in the mob and staged at the Capitol during the speech, or people who were at the ellipse and moved toward the Capitol after the speech.
What was the first thing that occurred that was unusual to you inside the Capitol?
Well, first, I would say watching the mob on our devices below pass with force various security perimeters was unusual. We've never seen anything like that before. But also on the floor, Speaker Pelosi was presiding in the House chamber, and abruptly she was asked to step off the podium, and her security detail took her off the floor. And I also noticed Mr. Poyer, who was the majority Leader, Steny Hoyer of Maryland, and James Firearm of South Carolina, who's the majority whip, also their details hurriedly went to them and took them off the floor.
And about what time was that?
This was in the 1 o'clock, say mid 1 o'clock hour. And at that point, James McGovern, who was a rules committee chairman from Massachusetts, he stepped up to the podium, and so it was a seamless transition. Debate did not stop. He stepped up to the podium and presided over the debate on the matter of theirs.
After Speaker Pelosi and the other members of leadership that you mentioned were moved out of the chamber, you said debate continued but for about how long did debate continue?
For probably another no more than 30 more minutes. And it may have been even fewer.
What happened next in terms of safety recommendations?
Mr. McGovern suspended debate, and a Capitol Police officer went to the podium. I remember it being the lower podium, so the podium where the speaker presides. There's two podiums in what's called the rostrum. The upper podium is where the speaker presides. That's where I got to sit. That's where Speaker Pelosi presided. That's where McGovern presided. The lower podium, if you think about the State of the Union, is where the president speaks. So a security officer went to that lower podium and told the members that there were people unauthorized inside the building, and that Capitol Police was dispersing tear gas, and that we were to reach under our seats and pull out the gas mask and be ready to put it on in case they had to disperse tear gas inside the chamber, and also be ready to move through evacuation.
Had you ever had to put a gas mask on in the Capitol House chamber before?
He's giving a recap of what happened that day from when they first got sworn in.
Mm-hmm. How stupid did you feel wearing that bag on your head? Did you ever see those, Joe? The masks they have to wear? They're like big plastic bags.
No. We're surprised they were even there.
Who were you sitting with at that time?
They had them installed like everywhere.
I agree with you that Swalwell's credibility is hot garbage. He's supposed to be the only congressman who's testifying, as far as I know, based on what they said earlier. And I can understand them bringing him on to just sort of give backdrop for like what was happening behind the scene.
She asked me if I could just look out for Ruben, so I went over and sat with the guy.
And what can you tell us about Congressman Gallego's training?
So I knew, and most of my colleagues knew, that Ruben had served combat missions in the Iraq war. And so as we were pulling out the gas masks, he saw immediately that I had no idea how to use the gas mask. And so he started having women.
The fact that they put on gas masks, like, did anyone from the crowd actually shoot gas at you?
Yes. You mean the police that were using so much tear gas getting everywhere?
Telling people to not breathe too quickly because that could lead you to pass out. He and I agreed that we would take off our coats so that our congressional.
I could just picture him there with the big gas mask and the face mask underneath it.
Well,
he also handed me a pen.
here's an article with some pictures of them. So you can private chat.
Any of them near you, just put this in their neck.
So what was going through your mind at that moment?
That's the gas mask he was wearing. That's hilarious. What the hell is that? It looks like some 1950s spaceman.
No, it's like escape hood, but that's also a gas mask everyone can wear because otherwise, like a real gas mask, like hold on.
Weapons for how to use gas masks. At that point, is we're waiting for the security officer to give us further instructions. The chaplain who
If you were gonna wear something like this, Joe,
Yeah.
you have to like fit it to your face and it has to seal properly. And there's different sizes. This hood you can just put over your head and everybody can wear one. There's no fitting and one size fits all. Also, a lot of people would panic because this can be claustrophobic if you're not ready for it. So
This is such a great
What, if
visual
anything,
aid,
did you
though.
notice being done to
Yeah.
secure the chamber at that time?
yeah.
So after
Yes, I know my mask is dusty, but
Capitol police officers were along with some
Yeah.
were pushing public politics were pushing furniture against the back doors.
like once you have a gas mask, they're pretty cheap to get a hold of.
I think everyone around Swalwell wears a gas mask. That was David Trone when he realized he was sitting next to Eric Swalwell.
Glass panes on them. And so furniture was being moved to block those doors because we could hear the pounding on those doors and the shouting of the rioters outside. In the front of the chamber where the rostrum is, where the podiums are, the speakers, there's two massive portraits. There's the portrait of George Washington, and that's on the Democratic side. And there's a portrait of General Lafayette, French general from the Revolutionary War. That's on the Republican side. So on the Democratic side, right behind the portrait is a set of double doors that takes you off the floor. They're glass doors, so I could see through the glass doors in what's called a speaker's lobby that Capitol Police were stacking furniture and chairs against the doors that lead into the speaker's lobby. They were stacking them as high as they could stack them with what they had. We sat, as I said, and waited for instructions on the evacuation.
How would you characterize the group of people gathered outside the speaker's lobby and the House chamber at that time?
At that point, I could mostly just hear the sounds, the banging or the screaming. I would not see that in the store.
And how would you characterize those sounds? What did it sound like?
It was harmful, and I say that because the chamber is mostly windowless, and so just having it alerted on our phones that suspected bombs were found around the building, and watching the violence against the police officers and seeing that the mob had reached multiple perimeters and had come closer to the chamber. It was really just the uncertainty of what they wanted or what they would do.
How concerned were you for your personal safety at that moment?
It was escalating as we went from a mass to a panic dynamic to a prayer from the chaplain. And it was when the chaplain read that prayer that
He's very much a not smart person.
texted my wife something I did not want to text her. I had essentially been telling her, we're going to be fine, it's okay, I didn't want to worry throughout the morning.
During the attack on the Capitol, were you following Mr. Trump's tweets?
I was, as I said,
They should definitely hit on the fact that that they most certainly have like special Wi-Fi for Congress people that enable them to get around the dampening, and that most people outside could not be.
And why were you
accessing
following his tweets?
Twitter?
We connected the president's tweets to our own safety in the chamber, and also the integrity of the proceedings that were taking place.
I'm going to ask for Exhibit 148 to be displayed, please. And Your Honor, this exhibit has been stipulated by all sides. This is one of Mr. Trump's tweets.
Okay. Are you offering it into-
I am offering it into evidence, Exhibit 148, Your Honor. And this is a long exhibit, so we're only going to look at 2 tweets of the whole compilation. So
Pretty
this
much.
tweet is on page 83, and it has a timestamp of 2:24 p.m. on January 6th, 2021.
Okay, exhibit 148 is submitted.
Congressman Swalwell, can you see the exhibit on your screen?
Yes, I see the tweet from the verified account.
And do you remember reading this tweet while you were in the chamber?
This is the key tweet that they're labeling insurrection.
It's like it was yesterday.
In opening statement, this is the tweet they were fixating on
And
as incitement.
how did you interpret this tweet? What did you interpret it to mean?
How is the objection relevance?
Got an effect on the hearing and a bunch of other things. What I would argue.
The outcome the president wanted, but again, for my personal safety in the proceedings we were engaged in, the colleagues that I was with, we interpreted the target had been painted on the Capitol, because that's what the vice president was when he was.
And can you read the tweet, Congressman?
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth! Exclamation.
Did you notice any change in what was happening outside the chamber after this tweet was sent?
Well, we didn't feel more safe, but it wasn't as if, the mob subsided. We were continuing to be updated by facts. They were trying to secure an evacuation map, which has been ready. Out in the shadow, continue.
Representative Swalwell, could you just speak up a teeny bit so that you're starting to trail just a little bit?
Yeah,
See you in the court, can't hear him.
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure. When the tweet was sent, we did not feel more safe. It wasn't as if the mob subsided. And so we waited, and this was near the point where we would ultimately leave the floor. But you could still hear the sounds of the pounding outside of the chamber and the screaming of.
Yes, they want to trivialize him as much as possible. It's
At some
purposeful.
point you were
It's definitely purposeful.
led out of the chamber, is that correct?
Yes, the security officer went to that lower podium and told us there was an evacuation route and that we were to go in the direction of the Lafayette portrait. Again, 2 sides. One is Washington, that's where they were stacking chairs. The other was the Lafayette portrait. Exit and so forth. We were told to go in that direction.
I think it's them.
I think it's them. I think they're on to us. Try turning it off and on again.
Sorry, Your Honor, small tech issue. Did the entire WebEx go down? Okay.
WebEx seems to still be on.
That's not uncommon though, for everything to crash.
Congressman Swalwell.
I think I can skip like 5 minutes here.
Yes, it's the Ministry of State Security intervened. No, Eric, you must not say bad words. That hurt our case.
I think I can skip.
You must
forward.
remember, Orange Man unwise.
I was leaving the chamber and going through the speaker's lobby. I did hear what sounded like a gunshot. I did not see it, and I was in the mix of members who were trying to move as fast as we could to follow.
And when did you ultimately make it to a safe location?
It took, as I said, at least 10 to 15 minutes. And so I would say sometime just before 3 o'clock or near 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask him.
Who else from Congress did you meet up with there?
So many ways to come at this cross.
Had been taken off the floor when Speaker Pelosi was taken off the floor. So anyone who remained on the floor was members of Democratic leadership, members from states that were defending their code, and then most of my Republican colleagues. It didn't appear that they had the same COVID restrictions that we had on our side. And so that was the group that moved together off the floor. Eventually, in the evacuation room, our colleagues from the gallery would join us, members of the press corps would join us, and then members of leadership staff who worked in offices in the Capitol would join us.
Once you were in that location, were you receiving updates as to what was going on in the Capitol and outside?
The Sergeant of Arms, who is the individual charged with house security, moved with us and was in the room when we arrived. And so he routinely gave us updates, and he frankly felt like being on a delayed flight with the Capitol. Probably the same thing every 15 minutes, which was that the Capitol was under attack. They were trying to get more resources to clear the Capitol, but we would have to stay there until the Capitol was cleared. And that was every 15 to 20 minutes.
Was there communication in that location between you and your colleagues about what was happening outside?
Yes, it was Republicans and Democrats in the same room. And at one point, I do recall that the Sergeant of Arms had kind of loosely implied that they may be bringing buses to the site and that we would leave in buses. And I was seated next to, for most of the time, next to Congressman Adam Schiff. And I do remember Mr. Schiff vocalizing that we should not leave, we should stay, and that essentially the worst thing we could do, if there's an attempted coup taking place, is to leave the site of the coup, that we need to go back to the Capitol and finish the count.
I'm going to now show.
I also recall, sorry, Ruben Gallego also.
This is just all hearsay. All hearsay.
And Gallego was asked that I remember the phrase that we would be sitting ducks and got on the bus.
This is all hearsay.
That would be the worst thing for us, for our personal safety.
At some point that afternoon, are you aware that Mr. Trump made a statement?
Yes, and I remember multiple statements and the video. Yes.
And I'm going to have Mr. Heim bring up exhibit number P68. Your Honor, this is also a stipulated exhibit.
16 submitted.
And do you remember seeing this video, Congressman Swalwell?
Yes, I do.
Can you play the video, Mr. Heim?
This is a video of him telling them to leave. It's their audio, not mine. Lord. We gotta go home. It's time to go home. Everyone pack up.
It indicates there's an issue with the WebEx audio.
Mr. Do you have much longer do you have with them? I think we should pray for lunch and people can figure out the technology.
I've probably got about another 10 or 15 minutes.
And I was hoping to get through direct before lunch, but I'm worried that the technology issue might take some figuring out.
Okay, that's fine, Your Honor.
And it may be that it's not possible to play the video over WebEx with sound. So hopefully your tech people can talk to the court's tech people and we'll figure something out.
I can also
Looks like they're about to break
have
the
the
lunch.
video played locally for Congressman Swalwell because everybody here can see the video, I think.
Hello.
So maybe that's an option too.
Okay, why don't we figure that out? Because I'd like to see the video.
Okay, yeah. And it's only 1 minute. It's short.
Okay, let's take a break. We will reconvene.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to a lunch break and that we are caught up. It seems like they're still in that break.
We'll work very hard to do that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so they're on lunch. Where I expect they'll. Oh no! What? Live event has ended. Further coverage expected. Live events ended. That's not good. They're probably having a different video for part 2 after lunch. It's really not a bad idea. I actually kind of like that idea a lot. I might, in fact, let me see what time they're supposed to be back.
That was exhilarating.
Yeah, I'm thinking about actually taking a little bit of a lunch break myself, seeing as we caught up.
Well, I
And
mean,
maybe-
I was just, Swalwell wasn't even that impressive. I thought. I
I
thought
don't
he,
know what he added. Let me get your thoughts before I take a break. Let's catch up on where we're at here. Okay.
I thought he
So
was
what are
gonna-
your thoughts about how this trial is going so far?
I mean, it's supposed to be their presentation, so it always looks great before the other side gets to go. Yeah, the officer stuff. I mean, playing the videos. I mean, that does not look good on its face, but that does, obviously the attorney for Trump got up there and did his thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, having Swalwell up there, I guess because he was the one, like he said, he was in charge of the opening up the session and everything. Like, okay, I get it, but he's not a very. I mean, he's a very boring witness.
If not for the fact that he's Eric Swalwell, sitting congressman, you're correct. He's
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, he's basically explaining what was going on inside. Let's think for a second. You sort of have to like step back and say, okay, what is the state? What are the petitioners? It's not really the state. It's the petitioners. Were 6 individuals who are coming forward petitioning the state of Colorado to the attorney to remove him from the ballot. So.
Yeah.
What they need to say basically, and I'll take a moment to sort of look through the walk you through the law. So this way we're sort of on the same page as I pull up Colorado's 14th Amendment here. But the objective here is they want to say Colorado
That he did he did insurrection, so he's therefore invalid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that since that he's invalid under Article
3
Amendment? Well, it's the
There's
state.
Section 3.
Right.
Oh, it's their own state. Oh, I thought they were using the.
Yeah, that's why they're in. They're in state court rather than federal court.
But they also weren't claiming the 14th Amendment period as well in their argument. I'm surprised they just didn't use it as an example so far.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was watching the yeah, okay, that's a fair point. that's a fair point, Janelle. He's kind of a joke. But the objective here under this, they're basically saying that because that I'm gonna pull up. I don't want to speculate here. Let me pull up the actual complaint and see which amendment that they're bringing it up. Colorado. If you can give some backdrop on Brandenburg.
So
Well,
you said on Brandenburg?
yeah, because I think
Yeah.
that
Okay. So
that's important for our viewers who are not attorneys to understand the difference. What speech is when free speech crosses into something that you cannot say.
Yeah. So the way the fire in a crowded theater, all that nonsense, all that got eviscerated in 1969 when there was a case called Brandenburg v. Ohio. Now it was actually here in Ohio, which another Ohio man making Supreme Court history. But it involved a news crew coming out and filming a group of Klansmen, and they were burning crosses and carrying guns, and they were talking about all the things Klansmen love to talk about. Now, he initially got charged with it was called criminal syndicalism at the time here in Ohio, but it was all part of like, oh, you're being part of a gang, and you're doing all the bad stuff. You're being bad men. Well, his speech wasn't very good, but it's still legal because he wasn't inciting imminent lawless action. You can say a lot of things, but for example, I can say, here's how to build a newsie. I can't say here they are in the trunk and here's a list of people you should go sort out. That is the big difference there in what's being done. And he wasn't, you have to actually be advocating for a clear action. And what was Trump advocating for? What he didn't say, go there and do this. He said, go there peacefully. Okay. Well, if he says go there peacefully, I don't see how you're inciting imminent lawless action at that point. So, it basically eviscerates all the things you ever heard, like the fire in a crowded theater, the clear and present danger test, every other thing out there up to that point was pretty much replaced by the Brandenburg test. And that's kind of where we are with it. Well, I gotta see, what was the actual, hold on here, who supported it? Oh, it was per curiam. So all nine justices supported it. Sorry, I'm looking through here. Yeah, hold on.
So
yes, they all did.
Right. And I'm just going to quickly pull up here the complaint that they have.
I hope that helps.
They filed. And this complaint is very lengthy. As you can see, we're on page 100 here of the complaint, and up to paragraph 433. And this is where they start their claims for relief. Which basically, the first 100 pages, they're laying out all the things, all the steps that were involved toward why it is that he's connected to how terrible the storming of the Capitol was, and how that was clearly an insurrection that he was inciting, in the views of the petitioner, obviously not my view. But and when they bring up here, so they're basically saying the first claim for relief, because you just want to ask, what is it that they're seeking here? So the first, relief under CRS subsection 1-41204 and 1-113 respondent Griswold. So they basically say that under the presidential primary election statute, the secretary is responsible for overseeing ballot access for presidential primary candidates, including accepting a major political party's form designated candidate as a bona fide candidate for president. And the legislators declared that it is the intended people of the state that the provisions of the primary elections conform to requirements of federal law. As part of her duties to supervise the conduct of primary and general elections, the state secretary is responsible for ensuring the qualifications of candidates for statewide and federal elections. Oh, so they actually are going under the U.S. Constitution.
That's why, a lot of times that's where you use the...
So they're basically using the 14th Amendment to say, it's very weird that this managed to stay in state court. That's crazy. It's crazy. I'm glad it is in state court in the sense that otherwise we wouldn't get to watch this, because it was in federal court. They would not televise this.
All these have been generally at the state. A lot of these have been at the state level. So that's what I was thinking here. But
yeah, but I'm saying, why would they not follow this in federal court in D.C.? You would think that that's what they would have done.
Well, I think because you're using Colorado's laws, and you're saying that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, are bound by that. But it's just saying, it's just like saying, well, the Constitution's out there. They're not saying it's the applicable statute. They're just mentioning it.
All right. So and they're and he's alleging that based on that, that
Yeah.
there's that the Secretary of State is honor bound to remove Trump from the ballot. So in that case, really, we should be pulling up 14. We should be pulling up U.S. Constitution 14.3. I apologize. I sort of got
Yeah, that's like
a
Article
little issue
3.
here. What?
I think it's Article or Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Correct.
That even when they passed it in the aftermath of the Civil War, they didn't apply it against anybody then.
Yeah. As you see here, Section 3 of Article 14 of the U.S. Constitution says no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector or president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So, and this is an interesting thing, by the way, because it says shall have engaged in insurrection. Even if they would be able to attack him as inciting insurrection, it's debatable whether there's a few legal issues with respect to this clause which could potentially exonerate this from being even a discussion. First of all, they see the statute seems to purposefully omit the office of president from this. If you notice, it says no person shall be a senator or representative of Congress or elector of a president and vice president. Why'd they leave out president and vice president? Doesn't that seem a little strange? That they would.
Yeah, but you have to presume they drafted it the way they intended that to be that way.
Meaning that they specifically were omitting a president and vice president. Doesn't it? Isn't that implied here that has nothing to do with who's going to be president?
Yeah.
The other thing they say is shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. They're saying he incited insurrection. Not that he was actually there in the Capitol. No one thinks for a second he was there at the Capitol. And this is one of the arguments that was raised in opening arguments, that under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, this doesn't apply to Trump. That because he did not engage in insurrection, even according to and that's why, as a matter of law, that this must be dismissed. Because yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. But I think going into a Colorado courthouse and saying, well, actually, incitement doesn't mean engagement, I think is a very, I agree with you. That's a very dangerous road to go down, because all it takes is the judge to say, nope, doesn't count. And now you've basically conceded that he was, you've almost conceded the point. So
you're saying you conceded on the incitement element to it.
Yeah, I think that's a very,
well, I think
that's almost like, let's say they file issue like summary judgment. We don't disagree with any facts. It's like, wait, no, you don't agree to any of those facts.
So I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you, only because I think that this was brought forward in a motion to dismiss that they said, and you're right, it should not be raised at trial for the first time. The Judge Wallace, who's the judge presiding over this, weighed in saying, like, I've already ruled on this, so I don't know, I'm not sure why you're raising this now. And he said he would just wanted to put it on the record. So that's not their primary argument, but I think that I don't think, even though some judge in Colorado disagrees with that interpretation, and this all plays into, you're trying to interpret the U.S. Constitution, and you're not a federal judge. You're a state judge trying to interpret the U.S. Constitution, and you're sitting here and saying that based on this issue, which clearly seems like it's an issue of federal question and should be handled by a federal judge, being handled by some yokel in Colorado who certainly seems to have certain issues with Trump. Based on and that's a quick read based on some of the ridiculous overrulings that she gave to the early objections. But I mean, to say that, so she decided that when it says shall have engaged in insurrection, that includes not just engaged, but inciting insurrection, which is another step beyond. So, and that's part of what he was pointing out. He's like, there's so many novel issues of law that the petitioners are asking the judge to decide here. And the judge is basically saying that we are going to be stripping millions of Coloradans from voting for someone based on multiple novel theories of law It's just
Yes.
it's kind of that was a major portion of what he was raising in his opening statement.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I thought that he was very effective in the way that he
Mm.
was he was laying out just how ridiculous of a stretch that this is. It's clear that they don't think that there should be a trial for this, that there should be no trial at all for this, and that this is not, because this is a legal question. It's very little of it is a question of fact. And if you think about it, the evidence that we've seen, so then they come forward after opening statements.
Yeah.
They come forward with the first witness, which was Officer Daniel Hodges, and Daniel Hodges basically came out talking about how awful it was in verifying certain video from his body cam footage. And the clips that you see on there, in case you joined late, was basically a bunch of clips of where some people were yelling, certain points where people were pushing. You didn't see any clips. It doesn't seem like he saw anyone being struck, although some officers were struck. And I want to be clear here so no one misunderstands my position on this. I think it was stupid to go into the Capitol. I think that was a very foolish move, which was not possibly going to be beneficial and can only be harmful in the long run to Donald Trump or anyone who believes in having a healthy republic. I also strongly have I have strong issue with anyone who got violent with police officers, because I think that and to my mind that was fully unwarranted. But the idea that people outside railing against Congress for what was happening inside on January 6th, that was the most patriotic thing in the world. And I'll tell you right now, I strongly considered going down there on January 6th myself. I didn't go down there, but I strongly considered going down there, and the idea that this is being portrayed as like this big mob of people who are looking to just overthrow the government that concept is un-American. That is the most un-American thing in the world. It's ignoring our First Amendment right to peaceably assemble, and basically saying that because your peaceful assembly to a certain degree went beyond where it should have gone, all of a sudden now this is like completely wrongful conduct. I think that's such a gross misread as to what happened on January 6th, that the left is determined to try and shove through the media, shove down the throats of Americans that everything that happened on January 6th was a terrible thing. When I say quite the contrary, rising up and standing up for saying, hey, we're demanding integrity in our elections, transparency of that integrity in our elections, making sure that it's not just you telling us that it's okay, but being able to let us see what is happening here, not carrying on ballot counting behind closed doors that no one can see it, and that there was clearly a whole bunch of shenanigans that just happened in this election a couple months ago, and that's not something that we as Americans will tolerate. I think that is. I think that making that statement and having tens of thousands of people showing up making that statement is actually is such a beautiful. It's actually a beautiful moment for America in that sense, and to the degree that it got violent, I think that taints it. But to paint it as if this was some out of control, unruly mob that he was purposefully assembling for that agenda is kind of preposterous.
Oh, I agree. And it just goes back to the idea of like, this was an insurrection that was unarmed. Like,
which only strengthens, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That proves the point.
Yeah. And it also just goes back to the idea of, he said, go home, stop doing it. Well, oh, he didn't do enough. He told them to go home. What did you want him to do? Start. And the funny thing is, I guarantee you, like, if you ask people on the left, well, what did you want him to do? Start shooting protesters? They would have been like, yes. But it's like, what do you want him to do? He told them go home.
Yeah.
Please stop. Please quit doing bad things.
All right. So I want to get. So this is what I plan on doing. First, I want to get to a couple of Rumble rants here, and then I think I'm going to shut down for like a half hour or so. I'm going to set up a second stream, and I'm going to start that at 3:45 my time, and I'll jump back in at that point. So Danconio Copper says Roseanne Boylan beaten and trampled to death. I have high def pics of elderly men, women with bloody faces. I beg police to stop pushing so we wouldn't trample a woman who fell while trying to leave. It's terrible. Jonathan says F- on their audio. If you're going to undermine the election, at least don't boom in the audio.
Well, that court just has bad, like, the audio for us is bad, but that court probably it's very decent to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
No, I don't think he was critiquing me. I think he was critiquing their audio.
Yeah, and that's the crappy part about dealing with like local courts. That's not the high on their budget.
Eurythmic says, thank you guys for all this coverage. Personally means a lot to me, as hard as it is to hear the liars. And I think I got, I did get everything now. Okay. So I will be back here on this channel at 3:45. I'm going to be setting up the stream right now, and you should get a notification for it. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw you out. I'm going to be setting up this. I want to thank you for joining me. If you want to jump back in here at that point, you can. And we're going to proceed. I expect that they'll probably be like 10 minutes, 15 minutes in at that point, and we'll catch up and we'll move forward from there. Anyway, so I thank you all for joining me. I will be back here at 3:45 my time. Until then, I'll catch you all later. I think that's it. We got everything. Do I know what time the trial starts each day? I assume like 11 o'clock Eastern time.
Yes, it's 9 o'clock, but remember it's in the mountains, so they're like 2 hours behind.
Yeah, they're on broken time. Anyway, I'll see you all in 40 minutes. Till then, take care. Godspeed.